See. Great, thank you. Well, welcome everybody to NHFT's public board meeting today. My name's Julia Curtis and I'm Deputy Chair, I'm trying to say Deputy Chief Executive. I'm one of the non-execs and Deputy Chair of NHFT, and I'm chairing today's public board. Krishni Waring, our chair, is here, but I'm hosting today. Could I just remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded and that we're live streaming, so that's great, and people can watch afterwards. I'd like to welcome governors and members of the public and any staff colleagues who may be watching. I'd also like to welcome Dion Mayhew to her first meeting as Interim Director of People, so welcome Dion, thanks for joining us. I'd also like to welcome Barry Day, who's Director of Children and Young People's Care Delivery Pathway, who's representing Anne Rackham, our Chief Operating Officer today. Final welcome to Janine Joseph, our Operational Director of Finance, who's representing Paul Sheldon, so you're very welcome, Janine. And lastly, before we get started, just want to mention we'd had some questions posed from members of the public around one of our services, the RTMS service, which has recently closed. And I'd like to address those fully in my report from the Quality and Safety Committee, which is paper J, a little bit later, because we had a full assurance session around the closure of this service. So I hope people will be happy that we'll address it a bit later on. Just also to note that Robin, one of our NED's non-executives, may well turn his camera off a little bit today and may dip in and out, but that's absolutely fine, Robin. Thanks for letting us know. We have some apologies for absence from Anne Rackham, our Chief Operating Officer, and David Williams, the Group Director of Strategy and Partnerships, and Paul Sheldon, our Chief Finance Officer. So can I just check if there's any declarations of interest for anything on the agenda? No, I'll take that as no, thanks very much. So we'll go straight to paper A, which is the minutes of our previous meeting on the 27th of March. Anything around accuracy that people wish to raise? No, great set of minutes, thank you. And then any matters arising that are not covered by the agenda today? No, that's great. Thanks very much. Just moving on to paper B then, which is the action sheet from the last board. You can see that all three have been completed, unless there's any comments on those. Content with those, thank you. And then paper C is the annual forward plan for the board, which was part of our routine governance. Has anybody got any comments or anything they would like clarifying on that? No, that's great. Thanks very much. In which case, we'll move straight on to our patient and service story from HMP Peterborough. And I'm going to hand over to Dave Mayer, our Deputy Chief Executive, to introduce the session this morning. Thanks very much, Dave.
Thanks, Julia. Morning, everyone. I'm really pleased that Emma Chippendale from the Mother and Baby Unit in HMP Peterborough is with us, and Emma's just joined Trust in April, so a warm welcome to her too. So we're going to hear about a really great service, keeping mothers and their children connected and bonded during their time in secured services, and that's a really positive framework, I think, for our contribution to the wider social fabric. So warm welcome again, Emma. I know you've got a very dedicated team there, and I'm sure you'll give them a good show today. So look forward to hearing from you. So over to you. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Hi, yes, my name's Emma Chippendale. As you were saying, I am new here. I've been about, like 6 weeks. Just a little bit about myself. I am by background a midwife. I've recently started in the perinatal mental health lead role here at HMP Peterborough. So I've come today to talk to you about a patient experience, but what I'm also going to do is give you a bit of a background to the setting and the perinatal pathway as well. So, bit that makes me nervous, sharing. Let's start. Can you all see the slides?
Yep.
Excellent. So yes, so just a little bit of a background about, as you can see, this is the prison. Disclaimer, it's now actually blue, it's not red anymore, but this is what the prison looks like. It's based centrally in Peterborough, and it's the only prison in the UK that has a male and female prisoners on one site. It has a capacity for 868 male, which are mainly on remand, and then 372 females. Then we have a purpose-built 12-bedded mother and baby unit, which can accommodate for 13 babies, obviously allowed for twins. It's privately run by a company called Sodexo, who are under a government contract. But the healthcare, the mental health, substance misuse services, the pharmacy are all run by NHFT, with subcontracting for GP and dental services. So I just thought I'd breeze over sort of what perinatal, the term perinatal means is refers to pregnancy in the first 12 months after birth. But for the purpose of the pathway, they've adjusted it, and what they've done is it reflects those that have also been pregnant within the last year, so they may have experienced a miscarriage or a termination, and anyone who has a child under the age of 2. So, ooh, has that gone black for you?
Yeah, it has, Emma. Yeah, it's okay now.
Back.
Yeah.
It's back. Oh, I need to go back. Oh, why did it go black? Sorry, I'm just going to try and go back from current slide. There we go. I don't know why it went black. Sorry about that. So Sodexo, along with the NHS colleagues, have worked collaboratively to create a bespoke pathway, obviously unique for the prison setting. And this pathway ensures that it addresses all the treatment, care, and safeguarding issues that are crucial, obviously, for this client group, this patient group. The pathway enables sort of consistent communication with all professionals. Obviously, we're working with other agencies within the setting, and of course works with the prisoner as well. It meets the health needs of the pregnant women using a trauma-informed approach, and this has been shown to help reduce sort of crime, reoffending, and improve individuals' health. There's also been some research that suggests it's a unique opportunity to obviously work with families and laying down foundations for the child's future, sort of physically, emotionally, socially, and helping their cognitive development as well. It's the pathway is underpinned by the 5 trauma core values, which are safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration, and empowerment. I've just popped down here a little bit about the reception process. So when the women arrive at the prison, they have a health screen done by one of our healthcare nurses. And at this point, they may identify that they fall under the perinatal pathway because they have a urine test, which helps obviously detect any pregnancy, along with other things like drugs, glucose, and infection. Then they also have a secondary health screen within 7 days, which again could pick up whether they fall under the perinatal pathway, and they have a second pregnancy test done. And then they have a repeat one done at 28 days. At any point, obviously, referrals are made. They can obviously see the GP, the mother and baby unit team, the mental health team, the offender management unit, catering get informed because pregnant women get extra food. We have an on-site midwife who's here Monday to Friday. Obviously, there's a health visitor, and then we let the duty Oscar know, particularly if they're in their 3rd trimester, in case they need to leave the prison quite quickly. D wing within the prison is the pregnancy wing, so they're offered to be housed on that wing if they wish to be. So that's just a little bit about the reception process. I just wanted to capture some of the sort of thoughts and feelings of that have been voiced by the women that when they arrive at the prison, often, you know, they've left young children behind, or they may be pregnant. So as you can imagine, it's quite a scary time for them. Often they don't know what services are in here, so they're worried about the baby, their health. So yeah, it's quite, you know, to imagine being, you know, for many, it's their first time in prison, so it's pretty scary for them. A little bit of background about the actual pathway. So what happens? So there's 6 pathways. If they're pregnant on arrival or pregnant and on substance misuse, there's lots of things that happen. So they obviously have healthcare and midwife access. We have a really great substance misuse support team. They get a designated prisoner key worker, a prison key worker, so that'll be an officer. They have motherhood mentors, so that's prisoners who are peer support. There's family matters, so they help keep families connected. You've got, like myself, perinatal mental health, and then the general mental health team, which is large, and with a psychiatrist as well. They get discussed at a weekly SIMS meeting, which is run by Sodexo. And, oh, sorry, it's gone black again. Don't know why it keeps doing that.
Don't worry, just give it some time. I think Emma, it comes right after a few minutes. Yeah.
Current slide, sorry. There is a pregnancy mother and baby liaison officer, so she works for Sodexo and she provides the women with anything they might need, whether it be pregnancy clothes, pregnancy pillows, helping with meetings, helping family connections. They also have the option to apply for the mother and baby unit. This is quite a hard process. They have to go through lots of meetings and reports back to see if they're fit to be on the mother and baby unit. Then they have a birth planning meeting, so obviously that's quite important we get that right if they need to leave the prison. And they have lots of checks, daily checks by the midwife, and then in the third trimester they get hourly checks by the prison staff. As you can see, if they've got a baby in the community, then they can have all their postnatal care that they still need. They get lots of support, still the same as if they were pregnant, similar as if you've been pregnant in the last 2 years. And then, unfortunately, some people do suffer pregnancy loss or have to have a termination while they're in custody. So they get a very sort of individualised plan and get a same support. And they're obviously considered for an ACT as well. I'm not sure if you know what an ACT is, but it's a supportive tool where someone may pose a risk to themselves or others. So the officers increase their observations on them. I just thought I would give you a little tour of the mother and baby unit. So as I said before, it's got capacity for 12 prisoners and 13 babies. It's got a sensory room. It's got a fully staffed nursery, so if the prisoners want to go and they work, or if they go into education or anything, then their babies can go into the nursery. It has a kitchen where they can cook for their babies, and it's got a laundry room and a TV room. The babies will only stay up to the age of 18 months at the prison, so should be, fingers crossed. That's just a little snippet of what it looks like. And now I'm just going to show you the interview I did with Charity. So Charity arrived here at HMP when she was 9 weeks pregnant, and she has spent so far a total of 16 months at Peterborough Prison, and she's still residing on the mother and baby unit with her baby. So I think my colleague pops up at the start because he was recording for me. You see his face and then he does disappear. That's Dan, the patient engagement lead here. So again, hopefully today. I've just wondered if before we start you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and how long you've been here at Peterborough Prison.
My name's Charity. I've been here a year and 4 months. I was 9 weeks pregnant when I come, and now my son's 8 months pregnant.
Brilliant. So just going to ask you some questions about your experience with healthcare while you've been in the prison, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your experience with healthcare when you first came to the prison?
It was normal, I suppose. It weren't nothing. My pregnancy was quite easy, so it weren't nothing dramatic. It was just easygoing. I come in, they asked me if I was pregnant, done a wee sample, proved I was pregnant, and that was it really.
And did they refer you to a midwife and that at that time?
I think they contacted my hospital on the out first, and then got like my exact like due dates and stuff, and then referred me.
Brilliant. So you felt, was that quite a quick process?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. And were there any concerns for you when you were coming into the prison? Obviously, you knew you were pregnant when you were coming. Did you have any immediate concerns about your health? Was there anything that was worrying you?
The fact that when I was first coming to prison, I didn't know about mother and baby units, maybe, but health-wise and stuff, not really, no.
Okay, so that's good. So when you came, did they talk to you about the services that we have here then for being pregnant?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite explain that quite well. What we.
Yeah, they let me know that there was a mother and baby unit here. If I'm here after I have the baby, I can sit aboard to go there, as long as everything's okay with my sentence and behaviour and stuff.
Were you worried about sort of how you would get your antenatal care, like how you would access like a midwife and appointments and things like that? Was that worrying you when you were here at the prison?
Not really.
Did your midwife explain that?
Yeah.
Quite well?
And plus, I'm one of the people that I'm not going to stress and worry because I'm pregnant, so anything I feel, it affects the baby, so I was kind of like plain sailing. Just
good. You're quite a chilled out person.
Yeah.
So but you felt like everything was explained to you.
Yeah.
That's really good. And can you tell me sort of a bit more about your journey with any of the doctors or nurses that you've seen while you've been here? Or a midwife? I know you've seen spent a lot of time with the midwife.
The midwife was really good. We see her every week on a Wednesday, and if we had any concerns before or after we see her, during the week we could contact her and she'd come and see us and stuff. She was really helpful. I've seen the doctor and nurse a few times. I had a urine infection a few times, but it always got sorted.
Was that quite a quick process to see them? Yeah. And you would go across to the main healthcare for that. So they have like a clinic that you would go and visit them there. Yeah, and once or twice they come to see me on the pregnancy landing as well to give me like a wee sample just at my room to save me going over, and then they just tested it and brought it back. So you felt like you had quite individualised care, so you felt like they were there for your needs. You know, like sometimes you're not sure if you can make an appointment or things like sometimes that. They're quite full down at healthcare, so save us going to sit down there heavily pregnant waiting. But some of them would come and see you on the landing and give you a wee sample there, which was quite good. Did you find it quite easy to get appointments if you needed? Did you have to ever make any appointments through the kiosk? Yeah, it takes, I'd say, roughly a week. That's good, isn't it? Yeah. Brilliant. Did you have any sort of concerns about like what your mental health might be whilst you were pregnant? Do you have any concerns? No, I worked with perinatal mental health and stuff when I come in anyway. That was really quite good, to be fair. Okay, so did you asked to be referred, or was that and so they did a lot of work with you? Yeah, they just more so reassuring you and talking to you and things. It's really good. So you felt like they were able to support your needs while you've been here? Yeah. So overall, how would you say your experience has been of healthcare in the prison? Pretty good. Yeah, you've had quite a positive experience. Yeah. Fabulous. We appreciate your time and for sharing your story. Is there anything else you would like to share about healthcare? I know you wanted to give a big shout out to your midwife. She was brilliant. Yeah. That's great. Thanks for your help and sharing your story with us. Thank you. Charity was quite nervous. She was very chatty before we pressed record, and then she did go quite nervous after that. So I did go back to Charity and just ask for a little bit more feedback. And just a couple of things, if there's anything we could do to help and improve. And she did mention a couple of things that sometimes, so they use like a kiosk system to book their appointments. and she was saying there wasn't much feedback on the length of time they'd wait. But obviously there is actually an average wait time displayed on there, and I've taken that back to the patient engagement lead and head of healthcare. They're going to work with the staff to look at more personalised responses, and maybe also put in waiting times in the main waiting area for clinics. And then about medication delays, the lead pharmacist it's something that's already being explored, avenues to sort of improve those waiting times for medications. But overall, as you can see, Charity had a really good experience. And yeah, thank you. That's my presentation. I don't know if anyone had any questions. Stop sharing.
Thanks, Emma. Dave, did you want to come back in for anything particularly before we hand over for questions?
No, just
okay.
a great presentation, and well done to Charity, and thanks to her indeed for sharing her story.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, and I'll add in my thanks, Emma. Absolutely amazing, the positive impact that you and your team have for a very vulnerable group of people. As a health visitor by background, I absolutely get the need, for all the support that you're giving. So absolutely incredible. Thank you. We'll just hand over to a couple of people, if you're all right, for some questions and comments.
Yeah, of course.
Go to Angela first. Thanks.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Emma, and welcome to our trust
you.
as well. 6 weeks in and presenting, we do appreciate that, and it's great to have you with us. So thank you and welcome. As you've said and others have said, people sharing their stories is always hard and challenging, but we really do appreciate it at the board because it gives us insight. And really, that's really helpful. And I think the video showing us the environment was also really helpful because we know the environment makes such a difference, and seeing it was really invaluable too. I've certainly met Dan when I went out to HMP Peterborough, the patient engagement lead, and I think, again, seeing how the service is working with Dan as well and getting the feedback was really encouraging to see. And I was really struck by you sharing the feelings of the people coming into prison, because pregnancy itself can be scary in a prison setting. Clearly it is, and the fact that that's already at the heart of what you're doing in the pathways was really struck me. So thank you for sharing, Em, and once again thank you for doing that as early in your path with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have to say, obviously being new, here as well, I know I didn't know what to expect myself of the prison setting and the service, etc. And I think I've been amazed at, what's available and the support that we do give these women. I'd say it's really scary for them when they come in, and actually it doesn't need to be. They have got a lot of teams to support every need that they have here. So yeah, we are very lucky to have that.
Great, thanks, Emma. We can come over to Joe. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Really good to meet you, Emma, and Angela's stolen my thunder on all of the thanks that are due. I've been fortunate enough to visit the Mother and Baby Unit at HMP Peterborough, and your video doesn't do it justice. It is one of the most calm environments. It's a complete surprise for a prison environment. I went in with a perceived idea of what I would experience, and your team, do such an incredible job. The environment is a very, very caring and nurturing environment. Obviously there's an application process for women to get admitted to the unit. So just stressing that this isn't an automatic process. There is a series of hurdles that young women have to go through to get access to the facilities. But just a sort of general question in terms of the impact of the work that your team do, because obviously there is a direct result in terms of mothers safely delivering of their babies and their health being monitored. Is there any detailed long-term research done from the unit in terms of when the mothers leave prison and what happens to the family unit? Because I think the work that is done is just so impactful, those early months of nurturing and building bonds, and it would just be interesting to see if there is any long-term work being done to monitor how successful the team are.
It's not something that I am aware of. I can absolutely take that back, because like you say, it would be really good to know sort of the impact of the services that we provide. You know, the research, like I said, does suggest that it, you know, it does improve reoffending, etc. So it would be really interesting actually to find out. As something I can take back to the mother and baby unit. Obviously, their staff there work with Sodexo, so they may be doing their own sort of own independent sort of research. But no, it would be quite valuable research, wouldn't it, to be able to bring back to. Definitely. I mean, it may already be there. I apologise if it is. But yeah,
it's early days for you. So I just think in terms of the value that the team add, because
absolutely.
you know there will be significant savings to the public purse down line if the work that your team do embed really good outcomes for those young women and their children.
I think what's really good is that, you know, like we say, we give them the opportunities to, you know, they can work, they can get new skills,
education,
you know, even while they're education, while they're pregnant, and when they've had their baby, they've got that ability to have childcare. And the babies can also go out to family and come back again. So, you know, they have got that ability to have some time to go and do other stuff. So, you know, generally improve their, you know, life for when they, you know, go back into the community. And the uptake is really good. I don't think I've met any prisoner who hasn't either done some sort of job or learned a new skill or gone to education. You know, it's we really encourage it as well for mental health. So, you know, I really encourage them to go and find something to do outside of the general routine. And, you know, also for new mums, if, you know, I've had babies, I know if you're just with your baby 24/7, it can be quite overwhelming. So just to get that time to yourself is really important. So I would like to think that it has a really good impact on, you know, their future and, you know, the really valuable time of bonding with their children. So, you know, they do get to spend a lot more time than they may do if they weren't in this setting, because actually they get to really watch their child grow and develop. You know, when you're out in the big world, there's lots of things going on, isn't there? So, you know, and we do there's parenting courses. So like the nursery nurses do like parenting courses for them. Obviously the health visitor comes in. Myself and the midwife are looking at some sort of antenatal and postnatal classes as well to improve their education around sort of like, you know, bonding and sleep management with their babies and weaning and things like that. So we've got lots of things in the pipeline as well. But I think overall really there's lots. Really
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Emma. So we'll come to Robin and then Dave. Thanks very much.
Hi, Emma. Thank you very much for that. I'm another one of the Neds, and a former drug worker and social worker by background. It looked really brilliant. It looked excellent what you're doing there. I've also visited the prisoner, though not had the opportunity to visit the mother and baby unit. But I was just going to ask a question about demand. Does demand outstrip the limited supply that we've got there? And secondly, what happens at 18 months? Where do they go on to? But it did look a really good unit.
Thank you. Fortunately, well, as with anything, numbers of pregnant women and you know, those that fit into the perinatal pathway fluctuate. We have people that are here on short sentences, long sentences, so it is an ever moving you know, service. I don't think that I asked that question. It's been a long time since they've had like a full mother and baby unit and a full sort of wing, D wing. It's been a long time since that's happened. So fortunately, we're able to, you know, capacity wise, give the service that we want to give. What happens at 80? So what they do when they apply for mother and babies, they do look at that. They look at the sentence. They look at, you know, if someone is going to be there, say, for 20 months, they would consider extending that by a couple of months so that they can still be with their baby. The reason they say 18 months is because babies become familiar with their surroundings around that time. Although, you know, like I say, it doesn't look to me like a prison setting, but they are more aware of that, and they obviously have to go in and out of security, etc., when they go out off the site and back in again. So unfortunately, occasionally there will be scenarios where babies and mothers would have to be separated at the 18-month point, but there would be a lot of, you know, support building up to that. You know, they would go out for periods of time to be with family or wherever they're going to go afterwards, and then there would still be those strong links inside they can still come and visit on the mother and baby unit afterwards if the family and the mother decides that's what they want to do. But they do take into account when they accept people onto the mother and baby unit, the length of sentence and stuff, and thinking about separation, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Dave, final question.
Thanks, Julia. And you made me think, Emma, just about the line of questioning that you had with Charity about just focusing on people's needs and what they particularly need. And I think that's just testament to you and indeed to the teams across our secured services that we're there for everyone at all stages of their life. And you remind me of some colleagues I met in Littlehay who are supporting residents there at end of life care, and here you are in HMP Peterborough supporting people at the start of their life, and we've got a full kind of story to tell across secured services with really passionate people like you and others doing that work for everyone regardless of their needs or where they are in life. So well done, and just many thanks to you and to all your colleagues for everything they do.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. I think you've stolen my words. Absolutely, what a great way to sum that up. And Emma, thank you. You and your team. I know you've only been here a few weeks, but that was an absolute, inspirational story. And to hear the impact for such a vulnerable group of people, you've given us a great insight. And I'd written down, the calm, professional, supportive, compassionate way that you undertake your work there is absolutely incredible, and that's come across very loud and clear, and we thank you and your team. Please take our thanks back to Charity and to the entire team for the work they do. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us this morning, particularly as you're only a few weeks in, and look forward to meeting you at some point. Thank you very much.
I will take all that back. Thank you.
Great, thanks
Well done, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, take a moment and just reflect. That was an incredible story, really, really empowering. Thank you to Emma. Okay, so we move on to our risk section, and we're going to hand over to Richard for our risk report. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Julia. Good morning, everybody. So paper D in the pack is this month's risk report. And as it's the first within the financial year, it both looks back on what we achieved at the end of the 24-25 year, and also then looks forward from here on So regarding 24-25, you'll see from the report just a radar chart really showing the position at the start of the year and at the finish. So the positive news is that for 5 out of 8 risks, we did achieve the target risk score, which is clearly a very positive position overall. And we've discussed in the board previously where we've had some challenges achieving a target risk score, often due to system factors more so than internal factors. At the last meeting of the board, clearly we approved the new group strategy known by the acronym THRIVE. So we're now looking to understand the risks to the delivery of our THRIVE strategy. And you can see in the report where we've reached in undertaking that assessment. I'll take that particular content as read, but note that the full risk assessments for each of the risks that have been articulated will be then flowing through the relevant committee meeting between now and the next board's meeting at the end of July. But the plan very much is to then have a fully populated and assessed risk register in the form of the BAF coming back to July for the board's consideration and approval. I think in a variation from the approach that we took last year on account of the new group strategy, of course, we've been considering how we best manage some of the risks to strategic objectives that we might be pursuing together with our colleagues at LPT at group level. So we're proposing, therefore, to take forward some of those risks and the associated assurance content, of course, into the new group board arrangement, the first meeting of which, of course, is happening later on this afternoon. So I propose that we have a discussion about how we then manage those risks at group level, at the very least oversee them at the meeting later on this afternoon. At the risk of taking up too much time, I'll just note then that the report also includes the current position regarding our risk appetite statement. We had a good discussion, the initial discussion at the board's workshop earlier in May. We are planning to put some further time in to enable the board to fully consider the risk appetite for 25-26 onwards. We have agreed, however, to pivot towards the approach that many trusts undertake, which is to use risk categories as a means of articulating our risk appetite statement. So look out for a further slot in the diary where we can explore that in further detail. But I think in the interest of time, Julia, I'll hand back to you for any questions or comments from board members. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Richard. Really comprehensive paper outlining our approach. Any questions or comments from anybody? Melanie?
Morning. Yes, just a point of clarification, really, and recognising that I wasn't at the workshop on May the 8th, unfortunately. But the additional BAF risk that may be subject to a group approach, as well as being risks for us as an individual trust, concerning research and innovation and digital, etc. Do I understand from your perspective that those will be risks owned by NHFT in the first instance, but then reported and potentially looking for wider mitigations in our capacity as a group? Because I didn't see those risks in this paper here, but presumably there will be those risks featuring in the NHFT BAF as well.
Shall I respond to that one, Julia? Or,
Yeah, that'd be
okay.
great. Yes,
yeah, I think what we clearly wanted to avoid, Melanie, is that sort of duplication between discussions. So what we need to understand in terms of how we're going to then deliver on our digital objectives or research and innovation objectives is how we then articulate the associated risks. Of course, there'll be an element of delivery that's peculiar to NHFT, which will be reflected at trust level. But we want to separate out then the sort of more strategic group-wide approach and have the risk associated with that. So in short, yes, there will be a reference to it at both trust and group level, but they will be different, reflecting the different priority or delivery mechanism in place.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Duncan?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Richard. I greatly appreciated the time we spent on the workshop taking a look at this. And I think it's really great work that you're pushing forward on this with your team. I guess the thing I wanted to highlight at the board is the continuing presence of these financial risks that are facing us, in particular the productivity risk. I think it's right that the board is continuing to focus on those, and the work of the executive team in particular on reducing the casual labour in terms of agency spend. It is to be absolutely commended, and long may it continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. And finally, Judith?
Thanks, Julia. Richard, thanks for the report. And clearly I'm very keen to understand what the risks are that we're going to be discussing around technology and sustainability at group level. So looking forward to later on this afternoon. But the question that I had, and I definitely echo Duncan's comments about enjoying the discussion that we had on the 8th and the work that's going on. The question is really focusing around our new risk appetite. It's really fantastic news that in the environment that we were facing last financial year, we were able to deliver on 5 out of the 8 BAF risks, meeting the target residual risk score. However, turning to the future, I was just wondering what lessons we're going to be taking from the 3 where we did not meet our target score as to how we set our risk appetite going forward.
Thanks, Judith. Great question. Richard, did you want to come back on that?
Great point, Judith, and I think that is the subject of some ongoing discussion within the exec team. It's that sort of debate: were we too ambitious? Did we not take full account of some of the challenges that we might experience? And I think, yeah, we will certainly bring some of that learning into the conversation that we have in committee to make sure we are getting the right level of ambition and aspiration with the reality of actually what's achievable. So, yeah, some further discussion, I think, certainly in committee on that topic.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Any further comments or questions? No, can I add my thanks too for the work behind the scenes to get us into this place. It takes an awful lot of effort and time, and it's, as you say, Richard, for the team as well. So thank you to everybody. So we've been asked to endorse the proposed strategic risks, but also for inclusion in our board assurance framework, but also noting that the 2 quality and safety related risks are actually coming, I think, to the Quality and Safety Committee at the end of June, and then we can finalise those. So just those withstanding, does everybody agree with the proposed way forward? Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Richard. Great paper. Thank you. Okay, we're going to hand over to Dave Mayer for our system-wide winter planning and risks update. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Julia. And again, just covering this for Anne Rackham, who's our Chief Operating Officer, who's on leave. So generally, as reflected in the IOR, performance across April and May across the system actually for UEC has been pretty good. We've seen good improvements, partially driven by our own contribution through our urgent care response with ICT, which continues to support the system, and we continue to see above benchmark levels of activity in those services. The system has also moved to agreeing resources for the urgent and emergency care plan for 25-26. So that does begin to now commission resources across Northamptonshire, including enhanced ICT provision, some additional SPOA capacity, so that's our single point of access capacity, and indeed supporting us to look at resourcing Spinneyfield as a recovery independence unit to form part of that recovery framework across the county alongside Turn Furlong in terms of the reablement pathway. So that's really positive news, considering the financial challenges facing the system. To see some resources going through to that pathway is quite important. Just also to note, as part of that work, there will be additional increased activity and resources to the voluntary sector as part of their contribution to the UEC pathway, recognising they have a significant part to play in Northamptonshire, particularly considering the demography of our population with increased frailty and older adults needing increased levels of support at a very place, local, neighbourhood level. And that's where, again, our strength as a community mental health provider operating at place and in neighbourhoods really comes to life with the voluntary sector partners. So good movement there, and continues to be good engagement across the system, and we've got some plans now to mobilise the community developments, which is positive. Again, the plan being realised for 25-26, and we're in the midst of it as it happens now. So nothing to escalate or concerns to raise at this point. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions or comments from anybody on Dave's update? No, but at this point, I'd quite like to pass on our thanks to all the staff involved. I know winter planning, everybody feels winter's a long way away, but as we've said many times before, winter feels like now, and I know a lot of our teams are under huge pressures. So huge thank you to all of our staff in whatever roles they're working in behind the scenes, and in direct patient contact for all their help and their continued passion and just sheer doggedness to deliver high quality care to everybody. So thanks to everybody for that. Okay, thanks very much, Dave. We'll move on to our strategy section, and I'm going to hand over to Angela Hillary for our environmental analysis section first. Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Julia. Just a few things to update on. Everybody be aware that as part of our collaboration as East Midlands Alliance, we continue to work with partners. We're planning another learning event, probably October time. So again, just highlighted to the board that that's usually a face-to-face opportunity, and great if people can join. So we'll send out details as those emerge. The Care Quality Commission continues to transform and develop, and we've spoken about that previously, but we do note that they are now appointing and publicising chief inspector roles and moving towards the specialist areas again, which has been a move back on their part. So we will look at that and start to engage with them in that basis. We have seen, as one of our East Midlands Alliance partners, St Andrews Healthcare has received a requires improvement rating for its medium secure wards, which was an inspection undertaken at some point last year. And the other thing just to mention is that next week I'm going to present at a national conference, Royal Society of Medicine, on quality and safety from a chief exec perspective on NHFT as a chief exec operating in a trust for a period of years. So that'll be an interesting conference, and I think one in which we know that safety and quality is ever challenging in our sectors, and working with other national colleagues on that will be an interesting opportunity as well. But that's all from me, Julia. I think Dave may have some other bits. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Dave, did you have something you wanted to add in?
Thanks, Angela and Julia. Just on service visits, the Quality and Safety Committee received a report in Q4 in relation to service visits, and that forms part of our ongoing, outstanding, well-led work. The Quality Committee did assure that process, so we can confidently step into 25-26 as that being part of our overall assurance framework and support framework for teams and individuals working in our services across the county and indeed across the region. And just on Health and Wellbeing Board, obviously we've been through a pre-election period. Just to update committee members in relation to elected members in the North, for Health Scrutiny Committee, the nomination for chair is Leon Gibbs, and for the Health and Wellbeing Board, again, sorry, just to clarify, this is for Northants, the Health and Wellbeing Board is Barry O'Brien. So that's helpful now that we have those individuals in place and we can begin to resume Health and Wellbeing Boards, which are in the diary. And just for West, Councillor Mark Arnold has taken on the leadership role. And obviously there's different cabinet structures across West and North, so it's slightly different variation in leadership. But the cabinet member for adult social care, public health and regulatory services is Councillor Laura Coos, who's North Hampshire resident and experienced in clinical services. So just a welcome to them really, and we look forward to working with them in partnership. And indeed, our governance structure includes elected membership as part of our governors, so the engagement with those will continue, and we look forward to, as I say, 25-26 will be an exciting year for us.
Thanks very much, Dave. Has anybody any questions or comments for either Angela or Dave on those updates? No, great, thanks very much. Okay, we'll move on to some of our reports, and we're handing over to Krishni for our chair's report, which is paper E. Thanks, Krishni.
Morning, everybody. Thanks, Julia, and particularly thank you for chairing today's meeting. It's always good to share the load, so thank you for stepping in for today's meeting. Actually, linking to what Dave has said, actually one of the things that I did take the opportunity to raise with both chief executives of our local authorities was that we do have vacancies on our council for representation from both councils. So actually, and they both did say that they would look at that once, obviously, the cabinet roles, etc., were addressed. So we'll liaise with them behind the scenes on that. Just a couple of highlights from my report. I'll take the overall report as read, but we were really delighted to welcome a couple of new governors, Summer and Mabel. Summer is very keen. She's a young person, so it's really good to have another sort of diversity element onto our council. It's a while since we've had a younger person in the council, and she's very keen to advocate for the voice of children and young people. So I think that's really good. And Mabel, who's actually a very experienced governor. She was formerly a governor at KGH. So really nice to have both of them on board, and we did a great induction with both of them. There are a number of other points in there. I won't go through all of them, but just to confirm that we've done a huge amount of work, thanks to Richard's team, for taking forward all the work on refreshing people's fit and proper persons checks. I've certainly reviewed all of those on a individual level, but we are now just collating everything for sharing with the board nomination remuneration committee. We've already shared the NED schedule, because we have separate nominations and remuneration committee reviews of this, but COG will receive some assurance around non-executive directors in June, and we should be able to conclude the exec directors in the coming weeks. So we will be well on course to submit by the timescale of the 27th of June, which is the requirement. And that's all I really wanted to highlight. There are a number of other things, obviously, and particularly significant amount of activity that NED colleagues have undertaken. So I will just invite NEDs, if they wish to highlight any particular involvement and activities that they would like to from the report. Certainly, I know Angela will come on to this, I'm sure, but the Together Against Racism event, which I was part of, and many colleagues around here would have been at, was really good opportunity to refresh where we are in terms of our commitment to anti-racism, working with Leicestershire Partnership Trust. So it was a great event, and I'm sure, as I say, Angela will say more about it. So I don't know if any NED colleagues would like to highlight anything they've been involved in over the last couple of months. Otherwise, Julia, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Krishni. I think Duncan and Melanie would like to share. Oh, and you did. That's a flurry of activity. That's great. Thank you. Duncan, we'll come to you first. Thanks.
Thank you so much. One of the events I went to during the month was the Welcome event. It's a new non-executive that NHS England hosted. And the thing I wanted to pull out of that was, as they welcome people from diverse backgrounds into the non-executive community across the NHS, the absolute focus there was on quality and looking after those that we care for. It was balanced a little by the financial challenges that the NHS as a whole has to face, but absolutely quality remains front and centre. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Duncan. That's really, really good to hear. Thanks very much for that. Melanie. Thanks.
Hi, yes, I thought I'd just do a shout out to the two staff network quarterly meetings that I attended in the last quarter. I attended the Enable and the Working Carers quarterly meetings, and great to see our staff networks thriving and driven and continually expanding their membership and dealing with some really important issues that members from these particular protected characteristics or particular lifestyles are supported with. So yeah, just wanted to reference our staff networks and what an important lifeline and vibrant sort of support network they form within the organisation.
Thanks, Melanie. Really, really important point. Thank you for that. Judith?
Yeah, thanks, Julia. Just wanted to highlight the NHS Providers Governance Conference that I attended a couple of weeks ago. Now, before everybody falls asleep because I said governance, it was actually really, really interesting, and it's not just me saying that. There were two specific discussions. Sorry, no, actually three. There were three specific discussions. One around the changing role of directors in the current political and economic environment, and the different approaches and skill sets that directors perhaps need. Something that was really pertinent, I think, to us was a really fantastic academic-led discussion around patient safety. And it was so interesting. I've now gone and bought the book. And as everybody knows, I'm not a clinician. So that's how interesting it was. I do have recordings. So if people want me to share, please give me a shout. And the third discussion that was really interesting was something that I led, which was the NED discussion right at the end of the two-day conference, bringing together NED thoughts around their impressions, things that are keeping them awake at night, and just general sharing of information. So it was thoroughly enjoyable, and was very happy to be there. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith. And I know, Richard, you'd put on there, it was a really good event too. And I think for us, it's really important that some of our NED colleagues are, so well connected externally and attend such events to bring back the learning and the current thinking. And so thank you for that. We really, really appreciate it. And yes, please, we absolutely look forward to your learning from reading the book. Would be great. Thanks very much, Judith. I just wanted to add in a couple of events that actually celebrated nurses in the last month. One was our International Nurses Day celebration across NHFT, where I think Linda and I were stunned by the numbers of people that came, actually many who hadn't booked on because they were just so excited, I think, to join us. So it was a fantastic celebration of many of the nurses in different roles across our organisation. That was absolutely fantastic. And I also went to an amazing day which celebrated our internationally educated nurses, and that was incredible. The support that they've been given through NHFT and in the local community, but also the amazing contributions that group of people have made to high quality patient care for the patients across Northamptonshire. Huge celebratory event, and very, very well deserved. So two great events celebrating nurses, particularly this time. So thank you very much for inviting us to share that. So thank you, colleagues, for sharing. It's always good that we get a flavour of the work that we're doing across the organisation. Okay, thanks very much, Krishni, for that. I'm going to hand over to Angela for the Chief Exec's report, which is paper F. Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Julia, and I assume people have read, but just to highlight a few elements, and to start, as ever, with thank you to all of our staff and volunteers and governors across the Trust, because we're describing lots happening in the NHS and within the Trust, and we do that because everybody's working together, and we never want to assume that. We want to say thank you, so thank you to everybody for that. You'll see in the national picture there's a lot of elements that are changing in the NHS. We've talked about some of those in board development sessions, but clearly, importantly, to signal the changes within integrated care boards with the model ICB. And I know that we will be looking at having some further discussions in board development time and possibly within our group around some of these elements and the impacts on us. So more to come on that. You'll note within the report that there is a change to the hosting arrangements around the University Hospital Association into NHS providers. Again, that's important for us because this is an important perspective that we're on a journey with across our group. So we want to keep close to that. We clearly have our new strategy, and it's been referenced already, our Thrive strategy, and I know we're going to be talking about Digby Q, our previous one, but just to say thank you once again to everybody involved in developing our new strategy, and just to remind everybody that every touch point, whether it's service visits or connections with our staff and colleagues, please talk about the strategy. We need to make sure it becomes something that is real and connects everybody, and not merely documentation. And I know we achieved that with Digby Q, so we've got an important task for all of us to do on that. I was really encouraged, and I know everybody in the board will be, to see us achieving good results with our bank staff survey. I think that's really important. We've reflected previously on the staff survey generally, but I think that bank staff survey is a really important factor, and one in which we can build further on. Krishna's mentioned the Together Against Racism workshop with our group partner LPT. This was fantastic face-to-face session. It was good to be together in the room, talking not least about what we have been doing, but what challenges remain in place, and to really connect and understand our commitment and continued commitment to this important area, and to reaffirm that. So thank you to everybody involved in it, and thank you for those that were able to join as well. A further thanks to our communication colleagues, because you'll see in the report that we have refreshed our staff intranet. This is not an easy task, it's an important task, but it's nevertheless a challenging task, because we wanted to make sure this reflected colleagues' feedback. We wanted to make sure that it was fit for purpose for what we need in our current environment, and credit to everybody that's been involved in that, and really welcome that particular refresh and reset, so thank you. And Dave's already mentioned urgent care this morning, and I'll just draw people's attention to the intermediate care team day in the series, day in life series, because these give a really good and fruitful, rich way of connecting with services and understanding things more. So I really do welcome those and encourage people to have a look at that if you've not had a chance, because they do give further insight. And I'll leave it there. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Angela. Full of really, really important information in your report. Thank you very much. Anybody, any comments or questions for Angela? I've got a couple of comments. One was I was going to also mention the bank workers, really, really important part of our workforce. So really good to see that. And I'd also noted about the administrative and clerical workforce colleagues, and that they've started a group, the Admin Professional Community Group. And I think that was building on a very successful conference they had late at the end of last year. And it's really good to see them sort of developing that community of practice. So big shout out to them. So thanks very much for everything in the report. No other comments or questions? Great, thank you very much. We'll note that. We'll move on to our DigBQ strategy closure report, paper G, and I think Dave, you're going to talk us through that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Julia. And again, just to recognise David William, our Group Director of Strategy, who's led this work and is on leave, so I'm covering him for this. And I know he would want to be here because designing these, implementing them, monitoring them is a lot of work, and I hope the paper does justice to that and sets the frame for us stepping into a new space with Thrive, as Angela said. So just for members of our public, DigBQ is our overarching strategy framework for the Trust. It's been in place since 2017. It stands for developing a partnership, innovation, grow, building a sustainable organisation, and quality and safety being the foundation of everything we do. We launched it in 2017, and we did a reset as part of COVID recovery back in 2021 in terms of just going back out to the organisation, asking people to re-anchor themselves to what we were trying to do as a trust, using DigBQ as a framework, and then stepping forward into the recovery space, which I think is reflected in our ongoing integrated organisational report. So in that sense, from my experience joining Trust in 2021, as Angela says, it's such an important anchor when people join a place, because it gives you a sense of orientation to what the place is, what it's wanting to achieve, how it's intending to achieve it, and it adds feeling to the organisation, I think, when you're new. So it's really important on that basis, and a real testament to all our teams that we've managed to get to a point where we're closing this and stepping into a new space with Thrive and our group work. So just some key bits. Angela's pulled out some of them already in her report in relation to the work we're doing as in social value. We'll cover that as part of our group board discussions this afternoon, being one of our group priorities, adding greater value to our communities and to the people who work with us through greater interfaces with places and local authority interfaces as part of our ongoing work as a partner within an integrated care system. We've also got good work emerged with the East Midlands Alliance, and we've had some reports come through here in quality and safety in relation to that. And indeed, our backgrounds reflect the ongoing work to become an associate, or to become a university healthcare group with an associate status in place across Leicester and Northamptonshire in partnership with Leicester University, and ongoing work with Northampton University too. In terms of Innovate, we've had, and I'm sure we'll comment if needs be, in terms of ongoing work with our research and innovation group. We've had a very successful set of conferences in relation to innovation, and now a very good innovation fund process in place, which is now being mainstreamed through our planning into 25-26 onwards. And that Dragon's Den approach, I think, is really helping the organisation to think about future opportunities in a different way and focus on some of the emerging technologies which we know we will need to exploit as part of our move from analogue to digital. I'll just call out, and again, just to reference the ICT day of or day in, they've been piloting a medical device which analyses urea and electrolytes within 2 to 3 minutes in people's homes. And again, that plays to our strength as a community provider working in people's houses. That is where our care is delivered for many of our patients. So just to really reflect that ongoing move, innovating always to try and deliver care closer to patients and to their communities and families. In terms of grow, Julia, Christian, and Angela have mentioned Together Against Racism as being a real anchor for the organisation stepping into a post-COVID space and reflecting the challenges that many of our people have and many of our communities face, as we saw with Stockport and others. So that again sets a really helpful basis for the trust and for new people joining us. It describes what we're about and what we stand for. And indeed what we don't stand for. And that programme, I think, sets that out really clearly. And that clarity in terms of how we want to grow as an organisation is built and driven through the DigBQ approach more generally. In terms of build, our green plan, we'll talk again a bit about this in the social value bit, because we're picking up sustainability as part of an overarching social justice piece as part of our group work. But we've done some good work on moving to a more hybrid model of working. Some of our patient feedback is really positive in relation to their experiences accessing care in different ways now. Again, COVID helped fast track some of that. It was part of our plan before, but it helped kind of move us into a quicker space with that. And again, we're seeing good feedback from patients in relation to that experience and flexibility of access for them. We've also moved through our business intelligence service and recently in the last month launched Flow, which is a portal interface for accessing some of our data systems online, which any one of us can access. That's an emerging piece of work and reflects our desire to become a completely data-driven organisation, powered by people but driven by data in the sense of evidence and using business intelligence to support further innovation and growth. The IOR, our Integrated Organisation Report, is in the pack for members of the public. That also began to bring together all parts of the organisation's information into a way which we could view through one lens. So thinking about our workforce, thinking about patient access and experience, and thinking about our finances as an organisation. So again, that reflects our ability to put foundations in place which allow us to step forward into a challenging set of circumstances for 25-26, which I'll talk when I come on to the IOR in more general. In terms of quality, the Safety First campaign grew out of the strategy, and that's been a real cornerstone for the organisation, not just for patient safety, but also staff safety. And we've had some good campaigns run to support both facets of that. And we're stepping into a space now with the group work, which we'll cover in the group board this afternoon, in relation to some of our priorities as an organisation, and safety being, as a healthcare provider, of course, being a foundational part of our responsibilities. Length of stay equally has been a really great quality improvement exercise across all teams, and that makes such a difference to patients in terms of their ability to recover. If we can support them back into their homes and communities really quickly, or appropriately quickly, that helps them in their recovery, and equally helps us to see more patients through the limited resources that we've got. So it is a good use of our resources to be able to grow that initiative and get to good national ambitions in terms of length of stay across both mental health and community services. And then finally, just to segue into the remodel of our therapy staff and community inpatients. And again, this plays to the urgent and emergency care piece, which I just described earlier. Our ability to have good reablement recovery support services at community level near to people's houses does help the system manage need across the resources we've got for inpatient services. So again, that work and that constant innovation to change and think about different ways of doing things does set us up well for the challenges ahead. And then to introduce, and again, just to recognise the work of the strategy and partnership team, and indeed the entire organisation, because it has been a co-produced piece. Our new group 5-year strategy called Thrive stands for technology, healthy communities, responsiveness, including everyone, valuing our people, and being effective and efficient. And I think that is both an inspiring strategy, because it is both describing something we need to do and describing something that is. We want healthy communities, and we believe we have a strong role to play in realising those by including everyone, being responsive, and helping our people to see a different way of doing things as we step into the 10-year plan as part of the NHS reset more generally. So a really helpful Digby Q to Thrive converter is in the pack. It gives an illustration of how we're moving the Digby Q across to the Thrive domains. And as I say, the feedback from colleagues as we go around working through this is they can really see themselves reflected back in this piece of work, because they can see opportunities in the language we've used. And critically, we have described it as a strategy and an opportunity for everyone to be involved, and that everyone piece plays to Emma's contribution earlier in terms of our work across services, including secured services. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Dave. I'll just open it up for any questions or comments before I come in. Angela, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dave. And I think it's really important to take a moment to reflect on the strategy, because it has served us for a significant period of time, and it was also enabled so many things, so many to reflect on. Of course, this is a flavour of that, but I think what Dave's demonstrated and the paper's demonstrated is that this is about connecting the whole organisation and our partners to delivering these areas, and it's been a really successful strategy, and we will build further on it through the Thrive. And that's really important too, that it does give us transition, not least a very strong platform. So thanks to everybody who's been involved in it, and thank you for reflecting back on its contribution.
Thanks, Angela. Judith?
I just wanted to reflect on when I joined the board, and I was learning about Digby Q and what it meant. And to now be in this really special position where we can reflect back is really very special indeed. And can I just finally say, I specifically like the chart, not only connects Digby Q, but Thrive together across the group, because I'm quite visual, and I love the fact that you've got all the dots showing how everything holds together. So looking from the past, from Digby Q to the future, and still carrying on with our values. I've just really loved it. So thank you.
Thanks, Judith. I'm building on your comments. I feel it's an absolute privilege to be receiving the closure report, because like you, this has been the strategy in place for the 4 years that I've been a non-exec, and we've seen through the various committees the updates, and we of course see all the huge amount of work that goes behind the scenes. And as you say, this is a snapshot of. It's a great report. I think it really highlights the phenomenal amount of work that's gone on, and it also highlights it's not just corporate teams, it's frontline staff, it's absolutely every single person across NHFT has contributed to this strategy. And it, as I say, it does feel a privilege to receive the closure report that we've reflected on. So thanks from the entire board to absolutely everybody involved in it. And I feel very excited for the Thrive strategy for the future. I think you described that really well, Dave. I think it's a real transition moment to, for our staff to be able to change, adapt, and face challenges for the future. So thanks everybody for the report, and absolutely it's been a pleasure to be part of. So thank you for that. Okay, we're going to move on to our integrated performance section, and I'm afraid, Dave, it's back to you for our, oh no, sorry, it's Judith for our AAA report from the Performance Committee. You can have a breather, Dave, for a minute. Thanks, Judith.
Thanks, Julia. As we've already discussed, actually, this is, if you like, in some respects, a bit of a summary, because it is the last AAA report for the financial year that we have just finished. And as it is, I'd like to start with Celebrating Outstanding, which was the financial performance for our month 12. I'd like to, on behalf of the Performance Committee, thank not only the finance team, but the entire leadership staff and all the services within NHFT to allow the trust to reach the plan, to reach break even and in month 12, which was really done very much with a lot of headwind. So really just wanted to start with that. The within the committee, we received a number of reports which I've I've outlined under Assure, which is the integrated organisational report, which is due to come after this, so I won't belabour the point, but we're expecting at committee level to see some potentially quite drastic changes to the report once the NHSC 10-year plan is published and incorporated within it. But we received a lot of assurance around wait lists, around sickness vacancy rates, safety incidents and mandatory training. So I'm always very happy to receive that report. Another report that we received was around the checklist assessment, which was sent by NHSC England, which on reflection, I should have highlighted in this report. How much deep assurance the committee's received that as an organisation, we are in fact very much in control of all the different 16 themes and opportunities presented and requested by NHS England. The number of areas where there were reds, and red means that we have self-assessed and we have in fact as a trust decided not to implement the controls. They reside within our people ambit, if you like. I have had a chat with Tim, who's the chair of the people committee, to ensure that we have a really good understanding of why we've decided that. The decisions have been based around quality and safety, so that no doubt, Julie, you will also be involved in that discussion going forward. But that really was an excellent report to receive. We also discussed capital programme, which clearly it's not yet been finalised, so no approvals will be received for any projects on the capital programme until that's been finalised. So please watch this place for next time. And we also received an excellent update from the Urgent Care Board update. And the final point was very, very much around the risk report. No reflection on Richard and Richard's team's work, but this time the committee decided to rate this report, rate the BAF as advised, entirely due to the very far-reaching work that is currently going on and we've already heard about. And the committee specifically discussed areas that we wanted to hear more about in the future, which is around sustainability and digital, as well as the importance of understanding how any risks move up and down in the organisation from other risk registers below the BAF. So these were all areas that were discussed, and really happy to take any questions on the AAA.
Thanks, Judith. And I think you've highlighted a really important example around the NHS England checklist assessment, where various committees, we do speak to each other and we do liaise and we do take a rounded view through different lenses. I think so that's really important to highlight. Thank you for that. Has anybody else got any comments or questions for Judith? No? Great. Thank you. Oh, Krishni. Thank you.
Sorry, Julie, a bit slow off the mark there. No, I just want to say thank you to Judith for a really good and comprehensive report. And really, I mean, I know we'll come on to this later as well, but I really just wanted to recognise the financial performance at month 12. I think it's really important to acknowledge, as Judith's highlighted, the tremendous hard work. And Duncan mentioned earlier the significant reduction in agency costs, which is, really important part of that. The only thing I would say is that I think for the coming year, clearly, recurrent CIP delivery, value delivery is going to be really, really important, because it is just something, it's always a challenge, isn't it? And it's great we've achieved what we did achieve. But of course, if we don't achieve it recurrently, we always leave ourselves a challenge for the next year. So that is something I know we'll be talking more about, but I just wanted to highlight that is the sort of focus that I think we need going forward, which I'm sure all the board would recognise. But fantastic achievement, and thank you to everybody for their contribution, including obviously finance colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishni. Really important, and I'm sure the whole board echo those sentiments. Thank you very much. Melanie?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Judith really, and just on the point around the NHS England checklist. And as the board will be aware, there's a great opportunity for us to work in tandem across the various level 1 committees, people, quality and safety, and audit included, as well as performance. And I just wondered whether this was one of those areas, those 8 segments, if this was one of those areas which we should maybe pick up at the committees in common, joint and vice chairs discussion, and see if there's a broader brush approach to it to support the work that you've already raised with Tim, Judith.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to bring this report and share the report if it's not already been seen by all the committees. The areas don't, the themes, if you like, that have been drawn out by NHS England don't naturally fall into any one committee. So it is quite interesting to see, to have that input. However, the reason why I didn't necessarily escalate to everybody is because we have self-assessed as meeting those controls and requirements. It's only the areas where I felt that we hadn't, we've self-diagnosed that we don't, that I've sort of escalated it to Tim, but I'm very happy to share across the board.
Thanks, Melanie, and thank you for highlighting the fact that as committee chairs and vice chairs, we do meet regularly. We started that a little while ago, and that's really important just to make sure that we cover the breadth of information that we need to across the committee. So thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to move us on to our integrated organisational report, which is paper I, which is Dave. Back to you, please.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Judith, for a really great summary of Performance Committee work. So just assuming people have had time to review the report, I'll just draw out some key themes, some improvements, and then some areas where we have ongoing focus work. Just in terms of waiting times, we're now seeing a third consecutive improvement of numbers of people being seen within 18 weeks, which of course is a national constitutional standard. So it is positive now that we're in the 5th month in a row where the 92% standard has been met. We have probably 7 service areas out of about 130 where we've ongoing focus work in relation to waiting list management in place, and we've got a programme of work coming back through Performance Committee just to keep an assurance overview on that work, particularly related to the 25-26 plan delivery, and indeed some service areas where we're under-resourced, as we know, and there's under-resourced nationally, particularly in some of our neurodiversity pathways. So that is positive, and we're pleased to see that movement, and again reflects what I said earlier in relation to recovery post-COVID, that we're now seeing consecutive grip in relation to recovery in those areas. In terms of workforce, we've had good performance across our agency spend, with a performance favourable to plan. We've also had an improvement in our turnover, which has decreased significantly from 11.4% down to 8.8%. We've improved the methodology for that so that it's a more accurate reflection or a more timely reflection. And equally, our vacancy rate has fallen further from 8% to 7.7%, which reflects ongoing work, as you've described, Krishni, in terms of making sure efficiencies are recurrent, and that relates to some of the work we're doing in managing our vacancies through an organisation-wide establishment review programme. Mandatory training rate is stable and favourable to target, and not that I'm endorsing it, but we do see this seasonal dip in staff appraisal compliance, which we are on, and I know Dion, as people director, is working through that with teams where we've got some underperformance in making sure people have good supervisions and good appraisals. So that again is a focus piece of work which we're undertaking this month and into next. In terms of quality, safety and risk, we see good improvement in terms of our control limits in relation to safety incidents. The patient safety incident response framework is undergoing a review as part of a national piece of work looking at PSERF. That'll be happening over June of this year. And then we've got a set of weekly meetings in place with care pathway delivery group management teams in advance of our coordinated forum to discuss and review moderate harm and incidents. Equally, we have put in place an executive safety huddle, which is happening weekly to ensure that as we step into 25-26, we maintain our focus on safety at all times, as I discussed during DIGBQ close down report. And we'll be receiving a safety dashboard through that group, which will meet and in due course begin to inform a reporting framework within our governance to quality and safety. Equally, we had expressed concerns about some experience feedback that our new Equivia, that's our friends and family test collection tool, we're now seeing a good improvement in that, with some focused work on teams, making sure we've got a good response collection level across services, and we've refreshed our scores for December 24, January and February, which has resulted in an improvement for all three areas, and that reflects our ongoing ambition to be a data-driven organisation, and making sure we've got accurate data is as important as having just data. So that ongoing quality improvement in those data areas is delivering kind of improvements in terms of our understanding of our performance. As Christian described, the month 12 position against plan was on target, and recognise the enormous contribution to the organisation and individual teams and individuals themselves in delivering that. We have a break-even plan for 25-26. We had delivery in month 1 of 1.05 million against a plan of 1.9. We've got a set of establishment reviews which are concluding this month, with further efficiencies being identified as part of that work to deliver our plan of 24 million in a full year. There was no capital expenditure against a plan of 2.9, just to note. In terms of adults and children, we're seeing really great improvements now in our MSK transformation work, and just a real commendation to the team for that. We had a discussion at the senior leadership team on inequalities on Thursday of last week, and we had a kind of an exposition from team members about the support app for people who are waiting, the Get You Better support app, and feedback from patients is really, really positive about that interface. So again, a recognition back to our Thrive strategy of technology being part of the solution for patient needs over the coming months and years. We've got ongoing focused work with speech and language therapy and community paediatric services. There's obviously a system improvement piece in terms of recommissioning that, which we're involved in. But apart from community paediatrics, which compares well nationally and regionally, it remains the 18-week piece remains an area of local focus, with additional senior nursing posts and an international medical graduate being recruited to increase capacity. Just moving through onto mental health, learning disability and autism, we're seeing a bit of a deterioration in our talking therapies performance. There was a fall from last month in terms of patients being seen within 6 weeks. Ongoing work is in place to mitigate that, and we'll bring that through performance committee in due course. And with again reflecting back on the DIGBQ discussion and close down, our out of area placements, which are a reflection of our length of stay. So this is where we have insufficient beds to meet local needs. We had 1 out of area placement at the end of April 2025, which is a significant improvement from 6 months ago. And again, that speaks to us being efficient and effective, being patient-centered and responsive, etc. So just to recognise that. Equally, Marina Ward has reopened in March, and we have patients who we had to place out of county because of that refurbishment work are now brought back into the county, into that newly refurbished resource. And I've had a look around it last month, and it's yeah, a great addition, a great improvement to our portfolio of inpatient resources for the community of the county. I'll pause there. Julia, for any questions, just to reflect the strategy, transformation and partnership element in relation to the Thrive piece, which we've discussed as part of the DIGBQ close down. And when we move into the group board discussion this afternoon, we'll have an opportunity to talk about sustainability, social value and new care models, etc. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Really comprehensive overview of what's becoming a really mature report, and I think the board really appreciate all the effort that's gone into its development over the last sort of year or so. It's been incredible and gives us a much more holistic view of performance, quality, etc. Really, really appreciated. Can I ask if there's any questions or comments, please? Joe, to you first.
Thank you very much. Dave, I was going to make the same point, which is this report in my short time here has come on leaps and bounds, and the quality of interpretation, I think, is the thing that's making a difference. I'm just going to focus a little bit, if I might, on patients, and I get the point about how people are managed whilst on the waiting list and the use of technology and things like that. But I think, you know, it's a genuine concern for our communities and our patients that, in spite of all of our best efforts, the story that's being told on pages 91 and 92 about the overall waitlist size and how long people are waiting is still a problem. And I note that the waitlist management and data quality group are meeting regularly now and doing the dashboards as and when they're required. My question really is a monthly meeting of that group and that type of intensive focus frequent enough, given the trajectory on our waiting list and how people are experiencing access to our services? And then a secondary question, which is, I'm sure as an executive team you're doing it, but are you monitoring the impact of that group to see whether it's having any positive impact on the waitlist time and size? Thank you.
Thanks. May I, Julia? Thanks, Joe. Just to acknowledge, the intense work that's happening on waiting lists more generally. We have significant resources in supporting some of that work. I guess for patients, obviously a waiting experience is not optimal for any services. What's important is that there is a movement in the waiting list numbers, so people are being seen within a time frame, and that's the bit that we are really focusing on and making sure that risk and need is kind of identified appropriately. What we are doing, so a few things. One is there is ongoing weekly work on waiting list management and reviews happening currently within care pathway delivery groups. We've also agreed at performance committee that we would begin to look at the 7 challenge services, shall we say, out of 130 services. So just to reflect that, you know, for the vast majority of our services, we are achieving for our population. There are specific services where a mix of either funding issues, demand that has been previously unrecognised nationally is being now seen within local services. They present challenges to us in terms of how we adjust the organisation to meet that need and do so in partnership. So that piece of work, that focused piece of work with the waiting list team coming to performance committee, updating on those, I think will help provide you with the reassurance that we're on this and extending all avenues open to managing it.
Thanks, Dave. Krishni?
Thanks, Julia. Great report, as others have said, Dave. It really provides sort of rich insight into some of the challenges and what we're doing about it. So enjoy reading it. Just a bit of first a practical question. I think out of areas that is quite a significant improvement, isn't it? It is a significant improvement because I know that there are other challenges in other places that are much bigger than that. And I just wanted to check, Dave, that there's a figure of 406 on the benchmarking England bit of that dashboard. And I just wanted to check whether that's really saying that 406 is the average for a mental health organisation, because I wasn't absolutely sure what that was telling me compared to our figure.
If you give
me my first question.
Okay, first
the
page number, and then I can have a look while you're asking the next one.
difficult to say because I'm on my iPad. So it's on the MHLDA and SS National Objectives 3.7 section. More broadly, Dave, it was just really about the developing. I know the current performance and assessment framework replacing the NOF is out for consultation. It was referenced in Angela's report. And do we have a sense, I suppose, that there are kind of new metrics that are going to be part of that we will then need to update our IOR against? Because I got a sense from NHS England there was going to be more of a focus on length of stay, particularly in mental health, but I don't know whether I was sort of, I haven't looked at the absolute, all the detail, but I just wondered if we have a sense of how much change that's going to bring with it, and whether, our readiness to be able to collect that data and report that. So that's the bigger question. The out of area one was just a kind of point of interest, because our performance seems so stark against the 406 figure that's shown in that dashboard, really.
Thanks, Krishna. I'll have a look. I haven't managed to route my way through to the specific data, so I'll do that in the background when we, as we work our way through and come back to you. In terms of the performance framework, excuse me. So the national framework is out for consultation, as we know, and we're providing a bit of a response to it. The intention that would then stream through to providers. We would have a first cut of our performance against that by the end of July. A bit like the current framework, only some of what we count as being important to us in performance is reflected in the national one, and that'll be true for the new one. It'll only be possibly as much as kind of 6 or 7 key metrics, which is, as you can see from our IOR, is significantly, we kind of report more than that. In terms of readiness, yeah, we're ready. We've been fine-tuning things for a while since it's been out for consultation. We know where we are against most of the measures, and we feel confident stepping into 25-26 in terms of our position on that. And in due course, I don't think it'd be a radical change to the central, the core IOR, but it'd probably be a change to the cover sheet, how I report to you in terms of where we are against those measures. I'd be drawing out the key performance in that sense. And for a board, our rating as a trust will be predicated on our performance within those measures. So as you say, it's an important part of our positioning as an organisation in terms of our ability to get things done for our patients. So yeah, not huge changes, but some.
Thanks, Krishna, and thanks, Dave, for that response. Duncan, over to you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And again, I find the report very straightforward to read, and particularly the way you can correlate the different activities of the trust. My question, unsurprisingly, is going to be about the finances and where we are on the value programme. I think it's first of all important to say, actually, it's great that in month one, the trust and colleagues are already delivering £1 million worth of value improvement compared to previously. By goodness me, you've got a huge target there, and the target was closer to nearer 2 million. And so could you just brief us a little bit on the work that's going on to try and make sure we get up to the speed which is more in line with the target we're needing to be achieving?
Thanks, Duncan. So we've obviously set the plan at a kind of an even distribution of achievement against kind of the 24 million annual figure. So while it's not ideal, we would expect some variation in performance against that, because it is a straight line assumption in terms of delivery. In terms of what we're doing now, we have concluded a set of establishment reviews identifying where we have efficiencies in terms of our workforce whole time equivalency, and we will be taking steps to begin to implement that. We think there's probably about £3 to £5 million worth of efficiencies that we can recognise through that process, and we'll be stepping that forward over June with phased delivery in terms of performance impact. We're also rapidly stepping up, and these have been in place for some time, a set of tactical performance groups in relation to delivery. They're weekly. We've got a value program process which reports nationally, where we're collecting performance against contracting, procurement efficiencies, non-pay efficiencies where we can, agency spend being a key focus. And as I said, we're doing some really good work in that space. So I think those package of interventions, as I say, they're not new. We're not kind of putting them in because of the month one position. They're part of our plan, but we hope that we will begin to see, accumulated benefit over the course of the year. And I guess as a board, we have to kind of, and this is the challenge, we will be judged on a monthly basis in terms of our performance, but we know it's an annual program, and we just need to balance those dimensions. And we'll keep you updated, as I say, through performance committee and other groups.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks, Duncan, for the question. Really important. Melanie?
Yes, I was actually going to circle back round to waiting lists, if that's all right, and just a recognition of the focus, of course, on the numbers and how to manage keep people well whilst they're waiting, but also not just in our trust, but across the board. I think there are innovations developing in how people who would traditionally have sat on a waiting list to follow a traditional pathway might be being dealt with differently these days. And I refer specifically to some recent information I was looking at around SALT and some early intervention that can be done through training parents and simple exercises that can actually have a very positive impact, not only on the then requirements for the actual SALT specialist, but also the numbers on the waiting list, as just an example. So I was wondering, not here and not now, but Julia, in our Quality and Safety Committee, I think a reflection on innovation, particularly in the areas that underpin some of the services that have the longer waiting list, might be a really appropriate and targeted way, ITI as well, of looking at, drawing out what we are doing, innovation, and any sort of near innovation that we are reviewing with a potential to adopt. And I think that just might be a really informative focus and a means of celebrating, I know, the invention and innovation that our clinicians are showing as we strive to tackle these areas where demand is increasing exponentially and it is so difficult to manage that increase.
Thanks, Melanie. Dave, do you want to come back before?
I'm going to ask some of my colleagues just to make a contribution on that, because it's a wide-ranging and important question, and I know Linda, as our Chief Nurse and Director of AHP, will have a view on SALT and ITI indeed in terms of waiting list management. So if I could just ask Linda maybe to come in, and then ITI.
Thanks, Julia. I was going to come in just to circle back on waiting list, just to provide some further information and assurance. So one of the things, Joe, that's demonstrated to us the effectiveness of the working group around that is the significant work they've done with data cleansing. So that's been impactful when we looked at our MSK physiotherapy teams, where they had people waiting, but some of them no longer required the service. Some of them had since recovered. So the work that they do is absolutely integral, because we then get to understand who is really waiting. It's also key to reflect that when we look at some of the patients that we have in NHFT, whilst they are waiting for a particular intervention, could be, say, talking therapies, they're already under another team. So they could be open to a mental health team. So when we go wider to children, young people, where we've got long waits for speech and language therapies, those children will be open to our universal services, so our health visiting services. They may be open to school nursing. They may be in receipt of other services. So essentially, when we've got our waitlist management group who are meeting, you can start to see that while someone is waiting, they are waiting well. So alludes to what Melanie is saying around that waiting well, where you can actually see that they've not been lost whilst just on a list. They are actually being supported, and they do have other practitioners who are waiting with them. And that supports waiting well, because then you can put in some interventions like supporting families and carers, like introducing some self-management techniques, which then, whilst you're waiting, you're still actually preventing a deterioration of the situation rather than it continuing to deteriorate. So the group are effective, and hence they are continuing with that work. And then for those who are waiting, it's really been impactful that we are assured that they are waiting safely, first and foremost. So we don't want people to be waiting and we think they're waiting well, but actually that they're safe. And part of you being safe is knowing who to contact when you're now in a crisis situation, what other support is available. So outside of NHFT, there are other community resources that are available to families, that are available to patients who use our services. So signposting to those whilst we ensure that we're working through those waiting lists. We're aware of the issues that we face around our capacity being outstripped by demand. But when we do make those contacts for those individuals, these are contacts that are very meaningful. We're working with people and certainly they benefit from those services. So we do encourage the team to always take that positive factor that where they are working with patients, families, it is making a positive impact for those families and for those patients. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. We'll bring Itai in, particularly around the innovation part of the people waiting as well. Itai, over to you.
Yeah, so there are a number of approaches being taken in terms of how do we improve our efficiency, not only for people who are waiting, but also, how do we power through people who we're seeing, and some of the innovations which are being put forward are artificial intelligence packages for supporting clinicians whilst they're assessing patients. This is likely to save quite a lot of time in terms of, generating reports and letters, and that will then allow people to see more patients so that you've got more patient-facing contact. So we've already started, and I can see Dave nodding, we've already started to explore, put forward for systems such as Magic Notes. It's just us being, very clear about, the patient safety issues. I'm always irritating people as Caldecott Guardian around, the service user data and, making sure that, that is a closed loop, large language model. So we're looking at those. We've also, as part of our whole job planning approach, started looking at demand and capacity modeling, so that we've got a more data-driven job planning, approach, and its use of things such as allocates, working with converting our job plans into e-roster, which will, improve our maturity on that and hopefully help us with our waiting list management. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Itai. Melanie, back to your original point. Absolutely. I think we'll take that away and have a look at Q&S as a way of bringing all that information together in the most appropriate format to have a look at some point going forward. Thank you for that. Robin?
Yeah, I mean, although the headline figure does go up and continues to go up, I think we understand the reasons for that very, very clearly. And I think it's important at board level that we do recognise that at the level 1 committees, particularly Q&S, we've spent an enormous amount of time getting assurance on the management of these waiting lists, particularly in the most difficult areas, things like MSK, and have seen dramatic improvements in the waiting times for particular conditions. Some of these things are outside of our gift, frankly, in terms of the numbers of young people in particular presenting to mental health services and so on. And it is really important to acknowledge the point that Linda made, which is that even though people are waiting for one bit of service, they are very often already in contact with services in other parts of the organisation. So although the headline figure is going up, and it is worrying, it is really important to understand the amount of intervention and engagement at level 1 committees this gets to ensure that these are constantly being reviewed.
Thanks, Robin. Really important. And to add to that, Joe had put a comment in the chat around it is, really, really important to our communities, the waiting list issues. And we constantly are reminding ourselves that every single number on a waiting list is a person, is a family. The impact is huge, and we absolutely take that. And that's why, as Robin says, we pay a lot of attention to how people are waiting and waiting well. So yeah, thanks for all of that. Last point from me on the IOR, Robin's already mentioned MSK. He and I both had the pleasure of visiting one of our MSK departments when our ICB Quality Committee chair came on a little tour a couple of months ago, and actually the work that MSK have done has been absolutely phenomenal, but the amount of hours and the work from the staff has been incredible. So again, big shout out to them for all that work. And you mentioned in the report, Dave, about IQVIA and some of the issues with our feedback system, IQVIA, and we're actually going to look at that as our focus session in Q&S Quality and Safety Committee at the end of June. So just to give people that piece of assurance. Okay, really good discussion, really good debate, and I think we've got underneath some really important issues. Dave, did you want to come back in? Sorry.
I think Krishni might have her hand up.
Krishni, sorry. Yep, sorry, Krishni.
Yeah.
Back to you.
And then I've got a response to Krishni's earlier question as well. I found the data.
Yeah. Sorry, Krishni, over to you.
I was really just going to make a brief comment. I mean, really good discussion, actually, and an important discussion to be having in public, because I know, as other colleagues have said, waiting lists are a concern, but it's really good to hear at the board, I think, the amount of scrutiny this gets at committee, because I think it's important to say that, as Robin has done. I just really wanted to highlight that we have had the privilege of hearing a number of patient stories or service user stories at our board, and often with a sort of how have we improved our performance element to it. And I think it'd be really useful. I know Anne isn't here today, but if we can encourage that, what sort of Melanie's focus on what are services doing to transform, I think it's really good to encourage services to share their experience of that as part of our patient stories that we receive at board, which I think we've traditionally done, but it'd be really good to keep reinforcing that. I particularly remember the one around the assessment service. It was just one that stuck with me because they'd done a huge amount of work, as I recall, and taken in, I think it was the Rushton team, and they'd actually significantly changed the approach they'd taken to reduce the waiting times for people and make the experience much more, if I can call it, a one-stop shop for patients, so that they actually came for one visit as well. So that's just one of the examples that I remember, and I think if we always encourage our services when they do come to talk about that, I think that probably also helps us to get a little bit of additional assurance around how people are really looking at transforming services, because we all recognise there's a huge amount of work going on, as Melanie referenced earlier. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Krishni. And back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks. Teams will really welcome that refreshed focus in terms of coming here to update. So yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Krishni. And in terms of the numerator, the denominator in the pack, yes, that's a national number, but there's in or around 58, 59. So that many mental health trusts. So you can kind of get a sense of what the number might look like for an individual trust, of which ours was one person. So, it's a great performance from teams and for our patients.
Great, thanks, Dave, for coming back to that. Thank you for that section. So that brings us nicely onto a comfort break, moving into our quality section. And we're kicking off with Paper J, which is myself as chair of Quality and Safety Committee. quite a lengthy report, but as you can see, there was an awful lot we covered, and I really wanted to give the board a flavour of the depth of assurance that we seek through this committee. So I'll take the advised section, take it all as read, but I'll take the advised section particularly as read, because there's one or two areas in the assure section that really warrant highlighting. And particularly the first item on page 2. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, we'd received a number of questions prior to the last board meeting regarding the service that was the centre of our assurance focus this time, and that was about closure of our RTMS service. So what we'd undertaken at Quality and Safety Committee was a risk and assurance session on the decision to close this service. So what we looked at was the impact for patients and to make sure that the process had been fully inclusive of clinicians and that we'd treated patients appropriately. And so I've given you the background as to how and why the decision was made. And we were assured by the fact that both 2 clinical senates, which are clinical leaders from both NHFT and across the wider system, were actually involved in the decision. And actually, patients had individual case reviews undertaken and then offered appropriate support. And the majority of patients that were under this service were actually part of our wider community mental health teams as well. So upfront, absolutely acknowledge that it was a really difficult situation for both patients and staff. But with a service that started as a research innovation and was never truly commissioned, it was become very, very difficult to maintain this service when the lead clinicians left, and we couldn't provide the service safely, as I've described in the report. So we also took a lot of learning from the process to close the service, and that's encouraging that learning will be taken forward. But that was the focus of this risk and assurance session. So we were fully assured that in a very difficult situation, all efforts had been made to involve the staff and to ensure that patients had a safe transfer to other services. So I hope that covers that. And at the end, I'll come back if there's any questions from anybody on that part. There's also some more important parts in the assure section. We received assurance on a prevention of future deaths report, which I think we'd mentioned in board before. This was a notice from the coroner of some areas for improvement for us with regards to our urgent care and assessment team, and we were assured that actions were already being undertaken to address the issues, and there is a working group that will oversee implementation, and I know that we'll receive updates back to Quality and Safety regarding that. The next point on that page also talks about a Midlands Intermediate Care Board Community Health Reviews benchmarking report, and we had to submit a self-assessment against some questions whether we had policies and procedures in place for people who required an assertive approach to their mental health treatment where engagement was a challenge. And you can read my update in there, but actually there's a later paper in the board, which is paper O, which talks about one of the recommendations, which looks at having where we will have our function for assertive outreach within our community mental health team. So again, we'll address that a little bit later in the meeting. Just to note that in the health, safety and risk report, we did pick up that there had been 4 incidents which were RIDDOR reportable, which is reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences regulations, a mouthful, but really important reporting process for when our staff have had an accident or an injury at work. We've decided we'd like to look for further assurance at the next committee around that. So we will be seeking that, and I'll bring that back to you. And then lastly, for the assurance part, we took the opportunity to look back over the year's workshops that we've undertaken and to look at the actions that we'd alerted to ourselves as a board, just to make sure that we were completing the actions and the recommendations. So we received a report, and this will become a routine part of our monitoring going forward. There were 2 items that the board had actually delegated to us in the past that I'm bringing you an update on. One was I'd alerted back in October through this report around the GP collective action and the impact on our services, and Itai, as medical director, gave us a very thorough comprehensive overview of the impacts for us. And in fact, there's only 2 impacts that are now ongoing, and they've been described there around prescriptions and tissue viability, and we're assured that they're in hand. And then lastly, in this section, at the board in March, we talked about access to our perinatal mental health service, and there was a query as to the dip in the access to that service, and we had a very thorough report explaining the rationale for that. And in fact, we've always met the national 10% target for access of our local population to this service, but in fact it increased. We'd done so well that we'd increased the target in 24-25, and although we hadn't met that, we had met the national target, so there was a good assurance taken from that. In the risk section, we'd noted the end of the financial year around our BAF risks, and expecting the new 2 quality and safety BAF risks at the next committee. And then celebrating outstanding, the first bullet point on there, the community beds staff have had a quality improvement project around pressure ulcer prevention. And it was absolutely incredible, the impact of the innovation that they've put in place to reduce pressure ulcers. And I met the quality matron at the Nurses' Day, that celebration that I mentioned earlier, who was telling me that it started with a Dragon's Den initiative, and they had incredible results, and we have adopted that technology now. We've shared the learning across all our services, and it's also resulted in some incredibly useful patient leaflets around nutrition and the importance of exercise, etc. So really, really important work. And my 1 or 2 lines in there doesn't cover it, doesn't do it justice, but just thought I'd highlight that, along with the other outstanding pieces of work. And then the additional matters we covered, very important just to highlight those to you. We had looked at the Supreme Court ruling regarding the Equality Act, and we will, going forward, receive further information on the impact to NHFT and for our people and communities. Really important work we heard about with additional meetings around people who don't find it difficult to engage with some of our mental health services, and how we're looking at supporting them. And then our national best practice guidance about staying safe from suicide has been released, and as an update, in fact, we're going to include that as part of our workshop at the end of June, and then we'll be bringing back updates to that going forward. So apologies that there's an awful lot in there, but happy to take any questions or comments from anybody if there's anything particular. If there's anything else to add? No? Krishni?
Thank you for the really comprehensive report, Julia. And in many ways, it's because it's so comprehensive, I suspect there aren't that many questions. But I did just want to, I wondered actually, so I wasn't going to ask this, but you highlighted the pressure ulcer prevention project. And I wondered if it was linked to the pilot that was mentioned in the DIGBQ strategy piece about wound monitoring. Is that the same thing, or is that something different? Does anyone know?
I might ask Linda, because I know the quality improvement project was definitely scanners that look at the risk before they develop pressure ulcers. I don't know, I might ask Linda to come in if there's anything, or whether we need to go away and just check that.
No, so those 2 are linked. So the pressure ulcer prevention, that's the community nurses leading it. And then the wound management is where the tissue viability nurses were coming in. So they are linked projects, but in different stages, because obviously the management of wounds is a very complex situation where we want to prevent, but we also want to manage wounds effectively so that people take a shorter time to recover from those and not result in further deterioration and admissions into acute hospitals. So it's two that are linked together to improve patient care with regards to pressure ulcer management, wound management.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Linda. That's great. Thank you. Robin?
I was just going to come back again very briefly to your points, Julia, about the closure of the RTMS service, and to reinforce through this board meeting the seriousness with which this was considered and discussed in the review meeting, and the depth with which it was covered. And we were offered absolutely clear assurance as to why this decision had to be made. And There really was no alternative with this. But the point was that it was subject to a really honest and thorough and comprehensive discussion, which fully offered, certainly me as an ed, complete assurance as to why that decision was made. Because I know it's a decision that had received a great deal of public scrutiny and attention.
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate the endorsement of that, the reinforcement that we did take a long time to look at it and considered it very carefully. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, I'm going to move us on then to paper K, which is over to Linda for our patient safety and learning assurance report. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Julia. I will take the paper read and also provide assurance that the paper that I'm presenting to you has been discussed within our patient safety group meeting, which was held on the 23rd of May. So further discussions there, together with various people presenting their information assurance with regards to our management of safety issues in the organization. So just a report and update on our 5 top safety issues, providing assurance to Trust Board that although we have a really good healthy culture of reporting, what assurance I'm providing to you today is that for most of our incidents, which are at about 96%, most of those have resulted in low or no harm. So actually, whilst we do report quite a lot of incidents, particularly with regards to our mental health and inpatient areas, they have reported significantly lower numbers of low harm to no harm incidents. I also wanted to mention that where previously we were not reviewing most of these incidents, we now have a dedicated practitioner to review the low harm, no harm incidents, and also that we are going to take this into quality and safety committee to provide assurance on those low harm, no harm incidents, just to ensure that they are being well managed the same way that we manage our moderate, severe, and major harm incidents. Another area that I was going to just highlight is with regards to our pressure ulcers. So just detailing the ongoing work that we're doing with regards to pressure ulcers. And of note, there has been a reduction in our pressure ulcers insofar as those that we are managing ourselves. So you can see that there is a changing pattern, changing trend with regards to where we are with our pressure ulcers. Of note, the review is what has been really impactful. So our lessons learned, and then we're able to use that to prevent other pressure ulcers. So where we are looking at us saying there has been an impact and improvement is with specifically with regards to our category 3 and above pressure ulcers. So those are the most serious ones where we've actually seen a reduction in those. So certainly the work that we've been doing is yielding some positive results. Of note, the pressure ulcer incidents that have then been escalated for review in our review of significant events learning forum have been 3 out of 150 incidents that were then reviewed during the period of January and February. So again, just demonstrating that although we've recorded these pressure ulcers, but actually the low harm, no harm were of higher numbers, and also that where they've not escalated to a full investigation, there's been assurance provided on the safety of the patients, mitigations put in place, and the immediate learning that has been captured from that. The other area that I did want to highlight is with regards to the information that we've been able to provide within this report on our thematic reviews. So again, we had mentioned that we've got ongoing thematic reviews. So just provided a summary here of those thematic reviews. Further information is discussed around these areas within the patient safety group, and the corresponding information around this will be provided within the report that goes to private board. Did also want to flag that within the reporting period, January and February 2025, we've had no duty of candor breaches, which is something that we previously had. So if you'll note, over the last few months, we've not reported any. So this is really good work with regards to our practitioners and our commitment to being open and transparent to those who use our services, or families, carers that we would have to then make that contact call to. Dave mentioned earlier around the review of our patient safety incident response plan. So we are reviewing our PSIF plan, which is in line with other areas. We're also reviewing this. We were one of the early adopters nationally, and we have been working to PSIF now for more than 12 months. So it's an ideal time for us to review it. And the information coming out of this review will be presented first into patient safety group, and then this will go to quality and safety committee, either as an escalation or for assurance. But certainly we hope that that will be an assurance piece, but we will then come back and update Trust Board with regards to that. So the last bit is just the ask of Trust Board to note the information that's being presented to you today and just take assurance of how we are managing safety incidents across the organization with a strong focus on learning and prevention across the organization. I'm happy to take any comments or questions, Chair.
Thanks, Linda. I open it up for comments or questions, particularly. Krishni, thanks.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Linda. A really comprehensive report. I just wanted to come back to the thematic reviews that you mentioned, Linda, and just wanted to double check because they all seem quite important areas and really welcome the focus on those themes. Should we be concerned that that some of them are overdue, just in terms of the areas that we're looking at, and can we be assured that sort of any immediate learning that we needed to do in response to, concerns that might have prompted that has already been addressed?
So if I can come in on that, thank you, Krishna, for that question. With regards to immediate learning, that will already be addressed immediately, because that's one of the things that we'll do for each and every incident. So it wouldn't wait for other incidents. With regards to any that are overdue, I'd just like to mention that we do need to get practitioners who have knowledge in those specific areas. Otherwise, it becomes really difficult for the investigator reviewer to then make progress. So for example, where we are conducting a thematic review around section 136, place of safety, you would actually want to have a reviewer, clinical investigator with knowledge of Mental Health Act. Otherwise, it then becomes quite difficult if the person doesn't understand what's happening. We've had a thematic review that's been delayed, unfortunately, due to the reviewer having gone off sick. And certainly the team were in agreement that we pause for that person to complete the work, because they were almost at completion. Handing it over to someone means restarting. So we are monitoring this, and certainly we'll be looking to come back with those completed pieces of work. So thank you for that. And we'll take it back through to Quality and Safety Committee so that they are assured with regards to that.
Thanks, Krishni. Thank you, Linda. And I just wanted to add in 2 quick comments. Excuse me. One is highlighting the good practice from learning from deaths. It's an area we don't often talk about because we have really good assurance. But actually, I thought it was time we actually flagged up the good practice, some really excellent feedback and some good impact from the high quality care that we provide. So that was one area. And the other was just to say thank you for all the work on the unallocated patient safety incidents, because I know we'd escalated that through Quality and Safety last year several times, and there's been a huge amount of work to allocate those investigations that are really important, not only for learning but also for families and of patients that have been involved. So thank you for that work, and it's great to see that those numbers stabilising out and dropping right down. So thank you for the work. Okay, if there's no more comments on that, we'll move on to Linda, paper L, which is monitoring workforce safeguards. Thanks.
Thank you, Julia. The monitoring workforce safeguards report, I'll take that as read. And just to assure board, this report will have gone to People Committee last month and we're due to present as well at People Committee next month. So a further update will go to People Committee with regards to this. It is a bi-monthly report that we then present through. So information that's presented here today, anything that then requires updating will be done ahead of presenting in People Committee. I also wanted to just make mention that we have discussed around our value program. So just to provide assurance to Trust Board that in any of our areas that are captured for the value program, we still apply our safer staffing tools with regards to that and complete our quality impact assessments. I've provided information within the report where we are alerting on our vacancies, and certainly it's an area that we remain focused on. So some of those will be out to advert, some of the vacancies will be those that we are reviewing where we need to skill mix so that we create capacity in other areas. So these numbers will fluctuate and change. As you'll appreciate, when we need to introduce new roles, we've got to introduce them within our financial envelope. So that means we may then have to convert other roles to then have those roles coming into place. We've provided information within this report on medical dental staffing, which we previously did not provide. So we hope that information will be useful too. And then we've gone on to detail information around any lapses in professional registrations, of which all lapses are well managed. We're well aware of those. And we thank our colleagues in the people team who are constantly keeping an update with regards to this information and certainly sending out refreshers to those particular practitioners who are due to renew their registrations. We've provided information here from the care delivery pathway teams with regards to their staffing and highlighted any areas that have been flagged insofar as areas where there've been less staffing numbers. And you'll find within that there's mitigations for those. So we've got areas where there's reduced occupancy, and certainly where we see reduced occupancy, we'll then have reduced staffing levels. Where our staffing levels have increased to over 100%, that would be due to things like enhanced observations and requirements for escorts of patients and actually the acuity of patients. So what you'll find is we will be flexible insofar as meeting the needs of individual patients. And certainly staff have commented that they feel supported in being able to use that clinical judgment and ensure that they're keeping patients and colleagues safe. The last bit that I've just highlighted within this report is with regards to the relocation of Beechwood Ward. So we have obtained our registration so that we move to the Spinifeld site. So this is on track, and certainly colleagues who have been involved in that process, we're all celebrating and really pleased that we've been able to obtain our CQC registration. So the move will go ahead as planned on the 3rd of June. So a huge thanks to everyone who's worked hard to ensure that we get to that stage. And certainly we look forward to making sure that that move goes across seamlessly and that patients are moved across. We have communicated with staff, with patients, so people are aware of that move. I'm happy to take any comments or questions, Chair.
Thanks, Linda. Really, really thorough, comprehensive report and a really important aspect of patient safety, particularly for around staffing. Just to make a quick comment, I think it's the second table around vacancies. Looks like some corrupted text. And Richard's responded in the chat and said he'll investigate and recirculate the corrected version. But we have got some vacancy information, so it's just to make sure there was nothing you think that was in there that would be relevant around our assurance. But we could perhaps take that later. Okay, so thank you, Richard. If there's anything in that table that you think we should know about, then perhaps later in the meeting you could come back to us. But really, really comprehensive report. Any comments or questions? Take full assurance from the actions that are being taken from that. So thank you for a really substantial report. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move into our people section, and we've got our AAA report from our people committee, and Judith, as deputy chair of that committee, is going to present that for us. I think Tim's not able to be with us today, so I'd like to add him to the apologies too. But actually, Judith, if you could take us through paper M, thank you.
Absolutely. So similarly to the Performance Committee, the People Committee was looking and summarising the end of the financial year. So I'd like to start with celebrating outstanding. First of all, I know that the board has said it whilst Chris was here, but also we the committee thanked everything that Chris has done within NHFT and the enormously positive legacy that he's left behind. So I just wanted to say that in his absence now, and welcome to Dion. We also heard from the AAA report from the Strategic Workforce Group, the absolutely outstanding achievements of the volunteering team who have been nationally recognised, which was absolutely fantastic and feeds in to our innovation strand of our strategy. And also, and this links to Duncan's earlier comment around spend, the celebrating outstanding for reducing our and continuing to reduce our agency spend has been really vital for the trust being able to deliver a break-even position, and therefore really needs to be recognised in the AAA report for the People Committee. I'm going to take the rest of the report as read. I would like to just draw out a couple of strands. Under advise, the committee discussed the new BAF, and there were already in existence some BAF risks in relation to workforce and people, which we are looking forward to having expanded and finalised. Under Workforce Dashboard, again, considering the new Thrive strategy, there was discussions around how to change the targets that have been set to ensure that they are challenging targets, but also realistic targets. And I know that Dion will come back in due course with updates on that. Under Assure, we received a number of very detailed reports, some of which we've already heard of from. However, the one that I want to draw out is the report on understanding the trends in informal grievances at the Trust. It was a fantastic presentation, but also gave the committee a lot of assurance around what it is that the Trust is learning from informal grievances. This is an early indicator of potential workplace issues, and it goes to the really strong culture of the organisation, which has given us this incredible report and the great assurance that we are in fact looking at it. We have identified 4 very separate areas that are drawn out in informal grievances, and these areas are being addressed in via training, but also via individual staff members as relevant. So that was a really fantastic report to receive. We also, I know that Julia's also mentioned it already, but under the AAA report from the Strategic Workforce Group, there was reference there to the day where we celebrated our internationally recruited nurses. So it was great to hear around that. Now, the rest I will take as read, because these were all standard reports and there was nothing specifically to draw out, but I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have on that report.
Thanks, Judith. Can I ask if anybody has any questions or comments? Krishni, thanks.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks for the report, Judith. And I mean, I'm just really encouraged about the sort of emphasis you had on the understanding trends in informal grievance and highlighting it as an early indicator, because it's something I know Angela and I've sort of spoken about as well, that actually is really helpful, isn't it, to have some sort of, you know, is there a way of identifying early warnings, if you like, to potential problems or hotspots when it comes to people issues, and what can we do to support people early so that they don't become more serious issues when it comes to more serious, you know, breakdowns in relationships or more formal action between colleagues. So just wanted to pick that up really, because I thought that was really positive to hear about. And then on the ethnicity pay gap report you did, it said that there was showing a gap in favour of those from an ECM background. So in favour of, which is obviously sort of different to, say, gender pay gap. Is that linked to the medical staffing particularly? Did we get underneath that? Because we do have a very diverse medical workforce, and of course, you know, with the higher pay there, I wondered whether that was a factor. So do you recall from the report whether that was the case?
I believe it was, yes. However, Dion, do you want to jump in if I'm wrong?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, my understanding again is that it was, and we're also looking at that in line with the WRES report moving forward. So again, just understanding how that plays out in the data we're seeing, and you know, what that means and how we can use that impactfully.
May I just come back in? I do wonder whether we, and it may have been visible, but I do wonder whether we should also look at, you know, how does it work across different staffing groups, because that may have been reflected in the report anyway. But of course, if actually it's particularly strong in one group but not so strong in other professional groups or non-professional groups, it would be useful to understand, I think, just in terms of being able to take action. So just highlight that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Krishna. Really important points. Angela.
Yeah, thanks, Julia, and thanks, Judith. Just in terms of some of the context we're in now, we're obviously describing quite a lot of changes in the NHS, quite a lot of challenges in terms of staff and, you know, change management. It would just be important, I think, for the People Committee to think about, have we got the measures and the touch points to understand some of that, because it is a different period, and I think we need to be not at all complacent that we have those. And I think a discussion there would be really helpful, Judith, if we can pass that on to Tim. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great, really important point going forward. Thank you, Angela. So thank you, Judith, for that. Okay, we'll move into our governance and assurance section, and we're on to paper N, which is the AAA report from the Audit and Risk Committee. And Duncan, thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So let me start off with celebrating outstanding and point out to those at the board and observing us today that the absence of anything under celebrating outstanding has nothing to do with the hard work that people are doing. It is just in the work of the committee that there is a lot of work going on by Paul, Janine and colleagues at the moment on finalising our accounts for the old year and closing everything out. So we are expecting to see far more celebration of that good work at our next meeting as we present the accounts and take a look back with our auditors of the work of the previous year. So moving on, I wish to bring out perhaps 3 points from the report for colleagues. The first was we were asked to look at the Marine Award business case and how that had proceeded. And we had a good long debate on that. And Dave, I think, referred earlier in the meeting to the success and everything that's gone on there. I think the first thing to highlight from the committee is we weren't in the business of reflecting the wisdom of the decision. There was plenty of evidence of how the executive had to react to changing circumstances and the problems that they were facing in dealing with the work with Marine Award. What we did, however, conclude was there is the opportunity here for lots more learning as to how we budget and how we plan for these more unexpected events as they go through. And Paul, as our CFO, has agreed to start thinking about how we might do that better still and report back to our committee later in the year. The committee keeps a strong eye on waivers and where this is where we have essentially gone outside our normal buying practices. And we keep a long and close eye on this because we don't like to leave any value on the table when looking with our partners, our suppliers, as to what we're buying and at what price we buy it. We think there is still some further work to be done here, and so this also sits under the advised matter for the committee. It has done in the previous. We received a lot of assurance as to the work that's going on and validation of some of that work going through our auditors, and we're looking forward to seeing some improvement in this area in future months. Finally, to bring to your attention, there had also been in previous meetings some concerns about how we are looking at the Tier 1 committees on the progression of business cases. So I'm really pleased to, first of all, report that actually, as we went through the business cases there with colleagues, there was no concerns about the use of the scheme of delegation and how that had been applied, and everything had been done appropriately. However, I think there is an opportunity once again to learn about how we can do things better and give people greater assurance. Paul, as our CFO, has agreed to take this way and take a bit of a further look at it. And I will be continuing to have conversations with him to see how we can build greater confidence and understanding of how these decisions are being made and how they fit into the budget. But for our work in looking at this, all was healthy and all was good in the decisions we had made. Those were the key things that I wanted to pull out from the Audit Committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Duncan. Really comprehensive report. And I'm really pleased that you noted about the importance of that outstanding section and the fact that everybody's very, very busy at the moment, understandably. So it was really good to pull that out, and we'll look for that next time. Thank you. OK, we'll move to some questions. Joe first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Duncan. Just in terms of the reviewing of business case submissions, was the focus of the committee just on that first stage, or did it loop back then in? Because the bit that I am not entirely comfortable about is the feedback loop of reviewing business cases once the business has been delivered, to ensure that all of the benefits that we expected to be generated were generated.
Really good and helpful question, Joe. The focus of the debate, as is in an audit committee, was far more on had the scheme of delegation been followed. I think, however, in part and parcel of the conversation we had in committee and the prompting of thinking with our Chief Finance Officer, Paul, we did cover that. We also covered the impact that this will have on the budget. And so this is where I think we might do a little bit further work going forward. But the brief that the executive had been asked to bring into the audit committee was more tight, as you indicate.
OK, thank you.
Thanks, Duncan. Krishni, thanks.
Thank you. I mean, just picking up on the comment that was that Joe made there. I mean, I guess with all business cases, it is important that we realise the benefits that we were expecting from the decisions we'd made. So anything that helps us to do that, I think, is useful, and not least because actually there might be some learning from that we can take to future decisions if for whatever reason the benefits we anticipated weren't realised. So just a general comment about that. Duncan, I was just interested in the reference to the Chairs of Audit Committee meeting system-wide. I know it's something you and I have sort of spoken about as would be useful to do, and I just wondered whether you'd been able to think about how you were going to take that forward, or whether you needed any support with that in terms of connecting with ICB colleagues and presumably UHN colleagues, because this is, if this is genuinely system-wide, then how do we enable it, I guess, is what I'm asking, Duncan. Thanks.
Krishni, again, really helpful. I think I'd like to take you up on your offer of some help. If I can report the conversations we've had with UHN have been very encouraging, and colleagues seem to be of a similar mind that the shift of work of an audit and risk committee has moved from more an inward-looking activity focused on audit to a more balance of inward and outward and working with your partners. because so much of delivering healthcare and the risks associated with successfully delivering healthcare is very much about the partnership of how we work across an ICS. And with that in mind, I'm deeply mindful, Krishni, that our colleagues in the ICB have had quite a lot on their mind at the moment and are waiting for the new model ICB work to come to fruition. But your help in clearing the path for me so we can find the appropriate time to make contact with colleagues there would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thanks, Duncan. Julia, I'll just mention it may be something we usefully pick up at the System NEDS meeting. We have actually got a collective gathering of non-executives across the system on Tuesday late afternoon, I think. So perhaps an opportunity there, but certainly we can pick that up and I can talk to ICB colleagues about that as well. Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you, Duncan. And just tracking back to benefits realisation, so we do see that occasionally. So through Quality and Safety Committee, we'd received a while ago a similar report around our electronic prescribing system, and I know it's going to be the focus for a workshop in a few weeks' time as well, seeing how well that's actually been embedded now from the initial implementation. So helpful, hopefully. Okay, great. Thanks for a great report, Duncan. And I'll move us on to paper O, which is an update on the NHFT approach to the homicide review and assertive outreach action plan for community mental health teams. So I think I'm handing over to Itai as medical director and Linda as chief nurse. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll take the paper as read. I think the Section 48 review required organizations to come up with an action plan, following the homicide of Valder Calacane. This work having started in 2024, there was a request to have an update on the 5th of February 2025, focusing on some key areas which were around personalized assessment of risk across community and inpatient team, joint discharge planning arrangements between people and their families and the community teams, multi-agency working closely with families, as well as eliminating out of our area placements. So there has been a comprehensive action plan which has been drawn up and discussed in various clinical arenas, in sort of pursuance of the February 2025 update, I've included a table of what we are doing with regards to the areas in our action plan that are focusing on this, and what stage in terms of progress we are, and how we intend to ensure that the tragic events that happened in Nottingham do not occur locally. So at this stage, I will invite questions on the approach that's detailed in the paper.
Thanks, Itai. Just wondered if, Linda, is there anything you needed to add to that, or are you happy? Is there anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Just to mention that with regards to our review for Section 48, we have previously presented to Quality and Safety Committee and actually have provided updates through that. What's also of note with regards to this work is the extensive work that the teams did, which was a line-by-line review of each and every patient. So in order to be able to provide individualized personal care, they had to go through a robust process of reviewing all the patients. We took a step further. So we didn't just look at mental health community, adults of working age. We've done this across children's services, as well as our learning disabilities, autism pathway, together with our older people services. So we've gone further insofar as looking at our community services across mental health, learning disabilities, and autism. And that work is ongoing. So we haven't said we've completed everything. As you can see on the table presented here, we've said that it is ongoing. We've reviewed how we work with families, carers, and patients to ensure that they're absolutely the golden thread in the work that we do. We're embedding our patient safety partners so that they're involved in supporting this work with us. In NHFT, we've done really well insofar as growing our our experts by experience who work with us, so they are well embedded within the organization, and that's also supporting the work that we're doing here. So happy for any comments and questions.
Thanks, Linda. Has anybody any comments for Itai or Linda? Robin, thanks.
Not really a comment, only to say that I think we've agreed, haven't we, Krishni, that we are going to present this on to governors next week as well, so they can be assured of the continuing action that is underway.
Great, thanks, Robin, for that. That's important to keep our governors updated. Thank you. Judith?
Thanks, Julia. Just had a really clear report. And I do recall the first time that there was a report on this, so I recognise that this is an update. I was just looking at the ongoing actions, and specifically Action 3, which really is focusing on the multi-agency working, which was such a crucial aspect to this really horrific case. And I noticed that the note there is that clearly there's a new NHS long-term plan, and clearly that throws some question or some debate, or there is something around that. So I'm just wondering if you could comment on that as to what the uncertainty is in relation to Action 3 and the potential new long-term plan.
So I suppose it's about ensuring that we align ourselves with the guidance for the multi-agency working approach that centres are seeking to provide. Locally, we're fortunate in the sense that our kind of MHLDA collaborative does have system partners who are beyond health. So we have got representatives from the police and from social care. And if you look at the Valda Calacane situation, there was quite a lot of concern around information sharing between the police and local communities. We continue to work very hard through our sort of security liaison officers to ensure that there's good information sharing and there's good updates of our risk assessments. And I think this is an area of focus that we're looking at locally. But what we don't want to do is to deviate from anything that is prescribed from centre. So as we carry on with what we're doing, I just wanted us to capture that we seek to align ourselves with the national framework as it develops.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Judith, and thanks, Itai, for that. Krishni?
Thanks, Julia. I'm very aware that this has received quite a lot of discussion, certainly discussion and review. I think at the Quality Committee you referenced it earlier, Julia, and you might want to say a little bit more about that. But certainly we've had some discussions with Itai and Linda in board development sessions as well about the learning, etc. I just I feel well informed about the work that's been ongoing. I just wondered, given that there are some ongoing timescales associated with this, and therefore sort of the need for assurance that progress continues to be made, it feels like that will be important. So I wondered, Julia, if we could agree as part of this that what the kind of ongoing reporting processes back to quality and safety, and whether we need it again at some point back to board, and what an appropriate timescale would be for that, so that we can all be assured really that we're making the progress that we need to be. But I'll be guided by you and Itai and Linda as to what's an appropriate timescale for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishni. Yes, we certainly have seen in detail the action plans and any draft submissions, so I feel we're well cited on the actions and the assurance that's needed from us, so we can give you that assurance. But we can work with Linda and Itai on the monitoring progress. There's an expectation that we'll monitor it. I don't think we've actually decided exactly how frequently, because as you say, it's very current at the moment, so we can do that, and then we can let you know how frequently we'll be reviewing it, certainly. Thank you for that. And Linda, back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on Judith's question, which is a very pertinent question. So just to provide you some assurance, Judith, Dr. Itai Matumbike is the Caldicott Guardian in the organization. I'm Deputy Caldicott Guardian. part of the issue was that practitioners felt that if it's confidential information just to our organization. So part of the work we've done is ensuring that practitioners are aware that information where they're not clear goes to the Caldecott Guardian for that decision to be made on what to share, how much to share. Am I all right to then share this information? So there's a lot of work that's already taken place in the background. And certainly for us in NHFT, we were well ahead of that, because those are things that are constantly being discussed around confidentiality, the understanding around risk, prevention of harm, and certainly we get that through staff training as well. So it's a wider piece that includes that system input into our shared training and understanding, so that we're sharing information effectively and in a more proactive manner rather than a responsive manner. So when we look at the Nottinghamshire situation, a lot of things then happened retrospectively rather than proactively. So hence we're saying that there is a plan that we're working to ensuring that we are sharing information so that we're proactive in doing that rather than being reactive to a situation. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Linda. It does. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. So thanks, Linda and Itai, for responses to that. And we just asked to note our approach to responding to learn lessons from the confidential inquiry. So thank you for that. Okay, moving us on to the last part of our governance and assurance section. We've got paper P, self-certification against our provider licence, and that's over to Richard. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so the paper is hopefully self-explanatory. One of the points that I omitted to state explicitly in the paper is that in proposing that we endorse Statement A in relation to the continuity of services condition, I have, of course, had regard to advice from Paul Sheldon, Chief Finance Officer. So I think I'll probably just take any questions on the content of the report, Julia, prior to then seeking the board's approval for the recommended option A in respect of this self-certification. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Can I open it up if anybody has any questions or comments or points of clarification? No? Okay. So do we endorse our statement self-certification on this occasion? Yeah, everybody's nodding. Thanks very much. Thank you, Richard, for that. Moving on to our draft annual governance statement, paper Q. Back to Richard. Thank you.
Thanks very much. As colleagues, I'm sure will be aware, the annual governance statement, or the AGS, forms a core part of our filings, which go in the annual report later on this year. So this is really a draft version of the statements concerning our governance arrangements. It's really here for the board's assurance in terms of progress being made, but also any comments or input the board wishes to make before the statements are finalised. You'll note there are a couple of points in the draft which will be subject to some further input. So clearly the risk conversation we were having earlier will inform the table in respect of the MAF risk for 2025-26, and likewise, once we've received the final version of the head of internal audit opinion, we can also finalise that aspect of the statement. But again, in the interest of time, Julia, perhaps take the content of the report as read and deal with any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And you're asking us to identify any areas which we need further assurance at this stage as well. So any comments, questions, or areas needing clarifying? No, very straightforward, very readable paper. Thank you very much for that. Lastly, in this section to you again, sorry, Richard, the annual review of the board and committee effectiveness, paper R.
Thanks very much. Yes, I will take a couple of moments actually on this report, in the sense that we are proposing a slightly different approach this year to the approach we took last year, which is that we are proposing to have two different question sets, one for the board and then another set for committees. This will, I think, allow us to interrogate some of the aspects of committee effectiveness that we've been talking about in committee, and equally then to deal with some issues for the board as a separate entity. So the questions proposed at the penultimate page of the report we would use respectively for the board survey and process and committee survey or process. In common with previous years, the approach would be to combine a members survey with a terms of reference analysis, which would also have regard to our assurance maps that we've created, and then have a conversation in committee or in a committee workshop before then bringing it all back into a committee meeting for decision. Similarly, we propose to bring the content of the individual feedback approaches through to the board workshop, so that we can then take account of the overall feedback across all committees before then the outcome of the whole process comes back to board. The timeframes proposed have been elongated simply due to the availability of board workshop dates. So it's not that we're proposing an excessively lengthy time for surveying, it's more to make sure that we've got the opportunity for a discussion. So really I'm seeking support from the board for the broad approach, and then if that's approved, then for input on the 2 sets of questions that we've put forward for the board and for committees. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Richard. I'll open that up for comments or questions. Jo?
Yes, thank you very much. Really interesting paper, Richard. On page 182, when you're looking at the proposals, so under the board section, point 4, we have the right skill sets amongst directors, and on the committee, one the right people attend this committee. Is there a layer underneath that which is around almost like a skills analysis of non-execs to make sure we've got the right balance of skills in the right places?
Richard, do you want to come back?
Yes, so I think you've highlighted an important area, Jo, in the sense that what we're doing here is relating to the functioning of the committee,
Yes.
and what happens in complement to that
Yes.
is the work that the nominations committees do in terms of the skill sets of individuals and the complement of that. So I think it's probably helpful that we do have regard to the advice of the nominations committees in respect of committee membership, but it may well be that Christy has some further comments on this.
If I could just, before Christy comes in, I think particularly on the angle of committee effectiveness, the right people attend the right committee. You know, again, it's just ensuring that the skills that the non-execs bring to those arenas make a match with the functions of the committees in particular.
Thanks, Jo. Shall I bring Krishni in, Richard, at that point? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Julia. No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think always important, obviously, to make sure we maximise, optimise the use of people's experience and skills, and in terms of any of the roles that are available, and people are therefore, and that's part of a discussion that I think we should be having at appraisals and other opportunities that we would have. More broadly, I would say that as a unitary board, I think it's important to think about the skills we have across the board rather than across NEDs or exec specifically, because it's the collective skill set of the board together as a group that I think really matters. And certainly at times previously, Richard will remember, we've done some, we haven't done it for a little while, but we've done a skills analysis across the whole board to see whether there are gaps, and that's been helpful. So that might be something we'll want to revisit, because we've certainly shared that with we've shared the results of that, I think, in previous occasions when we wanted to do some recruitment. So worth sort of highlighting that, but that would be, I think, from a board point of view, that would be what we would be looking for, is the skills across the whole board. And certainly if there are opportunities for individuals to maximise their skills as non-execs, then we'd obviously consider that as part of individual reviews. What I did just want to highlight is that Richard and I, you won't be surprised to know, had a discussion about this beforehand, because of obviously the board effectiveness bit. And what we did try and do is just, as mentioned in the paper, look at the new insightful provider board guidance, because it felt important just to see whether there's things in there that we wanted to build into the review. And I think, Richard, you brought in a couple of questions that we felt reflected that guidance. So I just wanted to highlight that, because obviously there's still a relatively new development for us to build on. So thank you.
Thanks, Krishni. Joe, did you want to come back?
Just responding, yeah, Krishna, I completely accept your point about the unitary board. I was merely responding to the specific wording in section 4, Richard, and it may be something to reflect on, which expressly points to skill sets amongst directors. So it may be in the spirit of Krishna's point about the fact that it's the complementary skills between non-execs and directors that wording just gets reflected. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Richard, I just had one point. Please feel free to say, no, that's not the role of our committees. I wondered if there was something around the extent to which we're considering system risks, current issues, and how we're connected to them as an organisation through that. I'll certainly leave that with you, but it was just a thought, but it may not be that that's appropriate to add in this time, but it was just a thought to leave with you. Yep.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, I'm certainly happy to take that into account, as you say. I mean, it's certainly important that we are confident that we have got the right connections to the system. So I'll think about whether that forms an additional question, or whether we bring it out in the workshop discussion. But either way, great. Very important point. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we've been asked to support the approach for this year, which I think everybody looks as though they're in agreement with. Consider the questions, which I think we've done, and you're taking something away to have a look at, and endorse the timetable proposed, which I think everybody's in agreement. That's a sufficient timetable. Yep. Okay. Thanks very much for that. And good luck, and hopefully we'll all behave ourselves and get the responses back to you on time, would be good. Okay, so that's paper R. So we're now on to our items for information. So paper S is the board declaration of interests register. And it's to note if anybody had any comments or anything they wish to say for that. No, not happy with that. Thank you very much. And we receive regularly the director and senior leadership team, hospitality and gifts, declaration of interests, annual register, paper T. I don't know if this is for information, if there's anything anybody wants to comment. I just wanted to say what an amazing staff group we have who have so many, receive so many different expressions of gratitude from our patients. Not that we expect it at all, but also the honesty that goes alongside that to declare a bunch of flowers, for example. It's really important for our governance that we do have staff that do declare, and this is a really thorough table that shows us that. There's no other comments or questions on that. I'll say thank you very much. Any other business? Haven't received any in advance, so I'm assuming there's no other business for today. Snapshot of board performance. Any comments from anybody around timings? We're quite early, unusually. Not because I'm chairing, I hasten to add. Do we think that everything's been appropriate? Is there anything we've missed? And more importantly, do we need to amend our risk register from today? Krishni?
Well, I was going to say, you shall have to do it more often. But no, I felt we had a pretty rounded discussion on a lot of different areas. There's some really good reports that were helpful as well. So just thank you to everybody for their contributions, and including, you know, committee chairs' reports from committees, because I think they gave a good view of what we needed to cover today. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Just to say in the background, I looped back round to Linda very kindly, Richard very kindly recirculated the table from the Workforce Safeguards report that had got a corrupted text through it. And I did have a little quick look just to make sure there was nothing I felt from our sort of quality and safety point of view that we would have asked questions on that table, and I was quite happy with that. But I'm sure if others look at that and want to come back with anything, they will do in the future. But I was happy with that. Thanks, Richard, for that. Okay, in which case I shall thank everybody for your time and efforts today. Our next meeting's 31st of July at 9:30.